Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 473. Sean and Jim tackle Suicide Squad. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, the Duke of You Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to talk about Suicide Squad. We also talk about, after the Suicide Squad discussion, a little bit about the whole little theme, is there a conspiracy against DC movies? What do we think? And we'll chat a little bit about that one. We have a great listener voicemail from Russell. And at the end of that one, I talk a little bit about the Batman Telltale game and just give some of my initial impressions for that one. So we are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Jim, sponsoring this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. What can you tell us about DCBService.com?
Come on, what can I tell you? You know what I'm going to say. Bundles, 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 bundles. We have 4 separate bundles just on the new DC Rebirth series, and I'm loving how they're breaking it down. They've got this group together. This month they're adding a new DC the miniseries bundle that's coming out. Of course, all these bundles, by the way, are 50% off. So just so we got that up front, out of the way, 50% off. But listen to this miniseries bundle: Dead Man, Dark Mansion, Forbidden Love, Hawkman, Adam Strange, Out of Time, Midnighter and Apollo, and The Vigilante. I was very excited to see that one because I really dig Vigilante. But again, all these different bundles coming through with the new DC Rebirth. Of course, they're continuing their support of Vertigo, also 50% off. And they've got these cool variant Rebirth covers. Again, those are only 45% off, but it's 45% off. How can you not like 45% off? Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, Jim, they've always got their deals of the week. I'm a big fan of these. One I want to really spotlight off the back is Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hardcover. Longtime friend of the show, Freddie Williams II, has done the artwork in this amazing crossover. The current writer of Detective Comics is the one who did the writing for this one. What a great crossover between both properties. And I encourage you to support us. 50% off, only $12.49. That is for a hardcover volume, 144 pages. That's insane. I didn't actually pick this up in hardcover. I usually grab all of Freddie's work when it's collected, and I did not grab this one. I'm going to grab it on this deal. Lucifer Trade Paperback Volume 1, Cold Heaven is 50% off, only $7.49. Wonder Woman by George Perez, Volume 1 Trade Paperback, 50% off, only $12.49. If you have never read any of the George Perez Wonder Woman stuff, oh my gosh, at $12.49 you need to pick it up. It's just really, really great material. Looney Tunes, the greatest hits trade paperback, is 50% off, only $6.49. And so, InStockTrades.com just has a diverse lineup of things. Obviously, I'm focusing on the DC stuff. They have incredible Hulk Masterworks up there that are 50% off. Always got great deals of the week. Their latest releases sales are always amazing. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for supporting our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Dun, 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 dun. Olympic time. I'm feeling Olympic-y. Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plotline, story, twists, and whatnot of the Suicide Squad movie. So if you haven't watched the movie, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk Suicide Squad.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the Atom.
So, Jim, it's time to talk about Suicide Squad, and this is a film you and I have both been excited to talk about. Just to give a little history for our listeners on this one, you and I, because of when you moved, we haven't had the chance to really go to one of the big film releases like DC, not just DC, but movies in general for quite some time. So this one, for us, we ended up going opening night together because it was a 6:05 showing, and it worked for your schedule and mine, so we got to go to the opening night together. I'm thrilled it was this movie because I walked in, I don't know if you walked in this way, I walked in hearing that people were concerned about certain things, and I was like, all right, I'm going to stop reading anything on this, and I'm just going to go and see what the deal with the movie is. I didn't know what to expect. I sat down and absolutely adored every second of this movie. It was a lot of fun. I thought the characters were spot on. The casting I thought was brilliant. It was just a fun movie. This was for me what I was hoping it was going to be. And you never know. I was hoping this would be DC's Guardians of the Galaxy, where it was, it's not your top brands, the ones like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Iron Man, Spider-Man, X-Men, those type of things. It's one of your lesser known franchises in the DC universe. And I was hoping this would do for me what Guardians of the Galaxy did, which just be a great, fun, exciting movie to go see. I adored this. You and I have both seen it a couple of times now. Where are you at on this one?
Well, I'm still loving this movie. I've seen it twice now, and that was cool getting to see it opening night with you. That was a fun time because going into that viewing, I had heard, just really bad things about the movie, and and it was funny. I was hearing it from the different radio shows I listened to because they got to see an early screening, and I stopped listening to them because I didn't want any details because I didn't want to completely ruin it. But I heard one of them say it was just an absolute worthless movie, and I was like, what? How? And it was funny because it was even one of the people from the show who likes comic book movies. So when they were criticizing it, I'm like, oh man. So I was I was beyond a little bit worried going into it because it wasn't just the critics. Critics were going to hate it. I knew that, and I knew there would be heat on there was already heat on the internet when they announced the movie. Anytime Ben Affleck's attached to a comic book movie, it's already the worst movie made, even though it's 2 years out. Oh, it's terrible. Like what? There's certain things that they hit, but when the people who were comic book movie fans were bashing it, and I was like, what? And so going into it and then seeing it, I tell you, man, I absolutely love the movie. Like you, I was completely, from beginning to end, and it's funny. I understand some of the criticism now because I've had time to actually sit down and read some of the people's criticism. But for me, this was a great casting. I loved the music in it, which is something that people are getting people have been critical on it. But I also loved how the pace went because this movie had it flared up and then hit down, flared up. And then when it kept doing that rise throughout the movie. And for me, those are like the individual issues. Those are the end of an issue of the movie. It's like, so this Suicide Squad to me was an overview of a giant story arc for the Suicide Squad. And there are moments where you get that high moment, bam, well, that's the end of the issue. Okay, now we go to the next issue. And it kept going like that. That's how I saw this movie. And then every time I've seen this, I keep seeing like, oh, okay, end of an issue.
Yeah, you mentioned the music. And let's just go there just because you brought it up. I didn't buy this soundtrack before seeing the movie. I bought it afterwards. And the reason why I'm noting that is, like Batman v Superman, because of the composer, I thought, oh, well, I'm just going to go grab it because I've gotten all the other ones. And this was kind of, I knew I was going to dig the music on that end. Suicide Squad, I didn't do that. I didn't walk in with any, because I knew it was, an ensemble, collection of music. So I was like, let me just go see the film and do all that. I liked the music so much, especially after the second screening, that I bought the soundtrack. Yeah. And I've listened to it, and I really enjoy it. I think it's a great soundtrack for this kind of movie and, for the intention there. So I don't get that criticism either. I mean, I guess if it's not your musical taste, I get it. But for the nature of this movie, I thought it was scored really well. And I really enjoyed it.
And actually, I agree with you completely. I loved this soundtrack, but it was funny because the one criticism I heard, and it was something I was like, okay, I can kind of see where they're going with this. The music they selected for the scenes I love the fact that they were spot on. Some people didn't like the fact that they were spot on. Like, for example, when you're going into the swamp, they're doing House of the Rising Sun. When Amanda Waller walked in, they did Sympathy for the Devil. Like, it was just too spot on. And the criticism of this, the musical criticism that I was like, oh, okay, I can see the point. They're Quentin Tarantino fans. And they love good music. They love how music plays. But the one comment they made is like, you look at a Tarantino movie, he brings out a song that kind of, it either will completely fit in with the vibe of the scene, or it's one of those things where you wouldn't see coming for the scene. And that was, and I can see people saying that. But for me, I thought I like the spot on usage of it. I like the fact that, especially, I like some of the cool songs they were using, but I like that just dead on, actual song as opposed to composer for this. So I don't know. It's one of those weird things where I think this is a personal taste.
Was that criticism specifically like bringing up Tarantino? Because here's the thing. I love Tarantino. I don't want this to be a Tarantino movie because it's not Tarantino making it. So right. I didn't want Suicide Squad to be a watered-down Tarantino movie. And when I say watered-down Tarantino movie, it's not insulting Tarantino movies. It's whenever you're trying to mimic the style of another director, especially a Tarantino who is... You can't really be Tarantino. That's kind of his thing. Why would you want... I don't get it.
Well, it's one of the radio shows I listen to, and they're big Tarantino fans. And one of the things they like about Tarantino, and it was just the example they threw out there was, they like Tarantino movies, and they like the usage of the music. Mm-hmm. They like how, and that kind of stuff. And that was just and as they're saying, I'm like, I see it. But again, I'm, like you, I like the way this movie did it, mm-hmm. Whereas, I also like how Tarantino does his music as well. So it's, for me, I think it's got to, the music has to fit the groove of the movie for me. And for me, it did. But again, this is kind of this is going to be a personal taste for people. And it's one of the things that I understand. I disagree with the criticism, but I understand that. And that's something I think that over time I've started an understanding for the criticism. I disagree with it, but there's like understanding of some of the criticism.
Now, let's talk about casting as we go through it. Will Smith as Deadshot. And I want to start there on purpose because I'm going to be honest with you. When I walked in, I like Will Smith. I'm a big Will Smith fan. But I'm also, I'm a big Deadshot fan. I'm a comic book traditionalist. I typically would like to see somebody who resembles the character and things like that. So I'm going to admit that was a thing for me beforehand. This shows you the talent of Will Smith. I love when an actor smacks me upside the head and goes, I get the premise behind the character. I'm going to make you think otherwise. I'm going to deliver. He got everything that I love about Floyd Lawton right. He got the fact that this guy is a premier, top-tier contract killer. That's Floyd Lawton. That's the nature of the character in the comics. If you don't get the idea that Deadshot is that perfect hit, you miss it. There's also the dichotomy of the fact that he's got a daughter. This is important to him. And he's a crook to the core, but he's got that family side that he wants to. His daughter's his Achilles heel. It's mentioned in the film, but they sell it so well. I believed that he cared about his daughter. And that's the thing. It wasn't just like a thing in there that was kind of thrown in and he's kind of going through the motions. Will Smith owned the character. There's a difference. There's a difference between the two. You can put a script out and the actor will kind of mosey their way through the script. You don't ever really believe it. I believed it. To the point where anything I walked in with going, I like Will Smith a lot, and I genuinely do. I like him as an actor, so I'm walking in liking Will Smith. My wife even said that afterwards. My wife doesn't go die hard over the comic book movies. Probably the nature of the beast living with me. She went with me to this one because I was going to see it again. It was after you and I went. She loved it and really commented multiple times over how great Will Smith was. That wasn't the reason why I loved him. I went in the first time with you where I loved him because of the fact that he nailed the character. But I also think what he did really well is develop the character in such a way that the movie was something that people could really enjoy. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend this movie to a friend who doesn't watch comic book movies to say, you want to watch just a great trippy movie? Watch Suicide Squad. Because it is. It's just really, really good fun. Will Smith nailed it. I felt like he was very faithful to what I love about Floyd Lawton. I want to see a sequel. I wouldn't mind seeing a Deadshot solo movie. I'd go follow it if Will Smith was in it because I thought he did a great job on this. That's the type of thing, not that there's a Deadshot solo movie on the horizon. I'd love to see Deadshot as a villain in Batman. Whatever you want to do with him at this point, you can go ahead and do it because Will Smith has made me a believer in the character. And he did a great job of that. I'd love to see a Secret Six movie where he plays Deadshot.
Oh God,
I'm in now. I mean, I'm in with him as Deadshot. That's a key off of that one, and I wanted to start with him on purpose because I walked in on that one just because that's me as a comic fan. It's an honest answer. I like to see people cast very similar to how they look in the comics. I like when they try to nail that as close as they can get. And in this case, the actor made me think otherwise, and I've got to give props to that because I'm a believer now. And that says something about a quality performance.
There are 3 of the castings in this movie that I will fight tooth and nail with someone to the point where I'd cut them.
Oh yeah.
If they went against, if they said anything disparaging about their performance. Will Smith is one of the 3 in this movie because, like you, I came into this, I was actually comfortable with him because of his acting, because I've seen him do enough of the variations of what he's going to need to bring to this. I've seen him do a butt-kicking badass. I've seen him do the tender family man. I've seen him do the guy who walks that line. So I've seen that range in acting in him. So I was comfortable with him at the role. But seeing was, oh my God, I was like, dude, this is Deadshot right here. He had this character down cold. And I would love to see or interview him and ask him about preparation for this, whether he did read the comic or whether he did get inspiration from outside of just the script that was given to him, or how did he become Deadshot? Because he became Deadshot. There are multiple scenes throughout this movie where I know you and I were high-fiving, and most of those scenes were the Will Smith scenes because it was, again, the comic book came to life right in front of me. You talk about him as the killer. You talk about him as a family man. I love the fact that they did make sure to bring up the code. No women, no children. He does have a code. Yes, he's a killer. Yes, he is a guy contract for hire. But you know what? There is that bit of a code to him, and I like that. And there was multiple times when I was like, "Oh yeah, that's Deadshot." And you throw out Secret Six, I'm in. With him in it, him in another movie, I'm 100% in. I'd love to see him in the Harley Quinn, solo, or a second Suicide Squad sequel. I'd love to see that kind of stuff. It's, I was completely sold throughout this.
Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. We got to talk about that. She became the character. I absolutely adored the performance. I knew from the previews that we were going to get there. Sometimes a preview will set a level of expectation where you walk in and you're like, yes, she did exactly what I expected her to do. This was above and beyond. I mean, it was over the top crazy. And I really loved her portrayal as the character. I want to see a Harley Quinn solo movie. I'm really afraid, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about this now because we'll talk about it at the end, but when you have that kind of negative vibe that goes on before the film was released and then during the film's release, I'm so afraid that this movie now is not going to garner a sequel, that there's not going to be the Harley Quinn spinoff on it. And I'd be really sad about that because, in all honesty, I had fun watching this movie. And a big part of that was her portrayal of Harley Quinn. I thought she nailed this. I thought it was really, really a great movie. I want to see her in a Batman flick. It's definitely, I want to see this character again in other movies portrayed by her because she was that good.
Number 2. This is the second of the 3 that I will 100% defend. It is what, as you're talking, I'm just nodding my head, saying yes, yes, yes. Here's the point of how much I defended her. Again, she was one of the things about her that was criticized. Again, on my radio show, I'm listening to them, and my blood is boiling to the point where I'm at work. Not supposed to make personal phone calls. I'm getting up, going from my desk, going into the one conference room so I could call into the show just to tear into them because I was getting so furious, and it ended up subject changed. I couldn't actually get on the air, and I was kind of angry because I'm on hold. I'm like, I wanted to cut into them over this, but one of the things that I absolutely loved, and I'm betting you loved it as well, was just her voiceover work. The physical stuff was wonderful, crazy, but when she had that tone to her, that Joker, that Harley Quinn, Mr. J kind of tone to her, and when the couple times when she was saying puddin' and just the way she was talking, I was like, oh my God, I absolutely loved it 100%. On top of the physical portrayal that she did, and I'm not just talking, physically bashing people with the baseball bat or anything, but just that little crazy in the eyes. You got there's a term out there called crazy eyes, where you look into someone's eyes and you're like, oh, that's a nut jobby. That is somebody who is just kind of touched in the head. She was able to pull off the crazy eyes. There's multiple times when you're just looking going, oh man, there's just bad things are about to happen. And just from a physical, look in her eyes, a little smirk on her face, just, the way she was standing, there's multiple times throughout the movie. Again, I was thinking Harley Quinn. I was like, dang, she brought it alive. And it was, she was one of the characters that I was worried about going into this because I didn't know anything about the actress. Going into this, I knew Harley could be somebody that could be played over the top and lose the character. She did not play it over the top. She played just a beautiful level of crazy with psychotic, with moments of clarity in there that just absolutely, completely sold me on her.
Did you see Wolf of Wall Street?
No, I didn't.
It's a great movie, and she was in that and did a really great job in that film. It's funny. The other thing I liked about her was they really did a nice balance of portraying the intelligence. They showed her as Dr. Harleen Quinzel at first in those sequences during the flashback. Then they would flash to her being Harley Quinn with the Joker. Then they'd flash to her, during the bits where the Joker turned her into Harley Quinn, and the whole "would you die for me" kind of thing. And it was just such a great sequence of showing the twisted passion of the relationship. I know there were cut scenes involving the Joker. I would love to see them. This is a weird one, though, because like Batman v Superman, I will defend adamantly needs to have the Ultimate version out there because, quite frankly, after seeing the Ultimate version, I can't even watch the theatrical version anymore because the Ultimate version is such a better story. It's taken a movie that I thought was good and made it great. Because Batman v Superman, I was an advocate for the film. I still remain one. But I said at the end of my review, I think I gave it a B, in that range. And I stand behind that. That was my theatrical experience with it. It wasn't a horrible movie. I was good. A B is a good range. Where it really rocked, and I've watched it 5 times now, is that Ultimate version. And that's a viewing when you sit down and watch that thing. But I keep watching it because I really, really enjoy the Ultimate version story better. The reason why I'm even bringing that up right now is I know there's supposedly a lot of scenes cut involving the Joker. I don't know how much time is involved in those scenes. I think they were cut for the purpose of the story for this one because I could see why putting in too much of the Joker and Harley Quinn would have changed the direction of this story and the focus of this story, which I've heard is one of the reasons why they did it. Now, I want to say this, though, and be clear. I want to see those scenes. I really do. I want those on on the version where they're the deleted scenes and we get to see that acting, or have it released. Those scenes put together and released as their own little mini movie or something. I would watch it that way as well. But I don't want anything done to drastically alter what I saw in the theater with this because the pacing was part of what I loved about it. I thought the pacing on this was really spot on. And if you start adding a whole bunch of scenes into this, you're going to lose some of that because this cooked and it was exciting. And in my second viewing in particular, that's kind of the measuring stick for me because when you've seen a movie once, your patience for certain sequences dwindles. Just because you want to get to some of your favorite scenes. The second viewing of this, man, I had no trouble. I was like, woof, this is great. Keep going. I'm in. And because it really cooks. It's really a well-developed pace. The editing on this one is strong, which I know is one of the criticisms. I don't get it.
Yeah, I know. I want to see those, the extra scenes, just because part of me wants to see what they cut and try to figure out why they cut it.
Sure.
Like with you, the Batman vs. Superman, I'm only watching the Ultimate Edition. I've seen it again another time, by the way, just because I was like, yeah, I absolutely love that version so much more than the theater version.
Yes.
It went from a B to an A on me. But with the scenes with the Joker and with Harley, I know a bunch of those scenes got cut, and part of me wants to see those scenes just because I want to see more of her. I want to see more of the Joker. And there's a couple other characters that if they cut some of their scenes, I would like to see them just because, maybe it would flesh out the scene just a little bit more and actually maybe add to my enjoyment. I love them scenes, but I'm like, you know what? You give me a couple extra, another, couple minutes, more, I'm going to be more happy with it.
Here's the thing. I actually want to see the deleted scenes. I'd like to see all of them. I like them as an extra, though. I guess that's the point I'm making. I'm a deleted scene junkie. I like that kind of stuff. I like that being added on as bonus features. To me, I watch bonus features on my favorite movies. I don't watch them on movies where I'm just kind of like, oh, it's a good movie. I enjoy the experience, and it's, like Popcorn Fest. I'm a big popcorn movie fan. I like to watch those afternoon movies where it's kind of like, that's a good movie. It's not an Academy Award winner. It's not a movie that's going to be through the roof. I haven't seen the new Ghostbusters, for example. I'll throw that one out there. But I really want to see it. in spite of reviews or whatever, I think it's going to be a good popcorn flick. I love the actresses in it. The scenes that I saw in the previews looked funny to me. So I know I'm going to enjoy it. The only reason why I haven't seen it is because of time. So when I see it, that's going to be a popcorn flick for me. I'm not expecting it to be an Academy Award-winning movie. It's a good afternoon movie. Yada, yada. I don't know that when I see that one, unless my socks are knocked off, that I'm going to sit there and say, I want to watch a bunch of extra features. I'm probably just going to enjoy watching the movie and really enjoy the experience the way it was intended to be enjoyed and move along. This movie, you can give me more content. I'm fine with protecting the movie as it is, though, because I really love the movie. And I want to watch this version at home. I want to see lots of extra content going along with it. Behind the scenes, how did they make it? Yeah. I want to see deleted scenes. Please give me all of them. You threw it on the cutting room floor. I want to see it. I want to know what you were trying to play around with. That's cool. I love Jared Leto as Joker. Is it Leto or Leto?
I would say Leto, usually.
Okay. Well, if I'm wrong on what I was saying, please please let me go on that one, because I really like him as an actor in this. I thought his Joker was brilliant. That was a piece I was a little concerned about, only because the Joker's been done so well. And when I saw like the kind of tattooed version they were doing and things like that, when I say, let me clarify my concern. It's more of what are they doing with this? Kind of got to see. I hope it's good. That's my concern. I mean, so it's nothing where I walked in going, oh my God, this is going to be awful. And I'm going to say the same thing about Will Smith. I knew I liked Will Smith as an actor, so going in, I wasn't like, oh my God, him as Deadshot's going to be awful. My concern with Deadshot was how accurate to the comics is it going to be, to the tone and what I like about the character. They completely satisfied that right from the get-go. Same thing with the Joker. I thought this version of the Joker was great, to the point where when I saw the scenes with the Joker and Harley Quinn, the scenes with the Joker and Batman, I wanted more. I did. And a movie's supposed to make you feel like that when they've got good characters. I want to see the Joker in a Batman movie. I really do. I think that needs to be a thing. I think Jared Leto is primed for that. And this Joker is one I want to see, because it's going to be a twisted movie. And for me, when I look at Batman movies, I'm like, we've done a lot of Joker already. Let's do, other characters and things. Now I want to see another Joker movie. I'm in. It's time to do Batman versus Joker again. And, go ahead and do the death of Jason Todd, do whatever. I heard that's a rumor. I don't know if they're going to do that. I would certainly watch that, or, Under the Hood, where they bring, Jason Todd back. I don't care which version or what they do. I would love to see the Joker versus Batman.
Yes, I agree. And I digged him, and he was one of those characters going into this. I was comfortable with his acting. The Dallas Buyers Club I thought was a great movie, and he was in the movie Lords of War with Nicolas Cage, who Nicolas Cage gets criticism a lot. I actually enjoy him as an actor, and his performance, and Jared's performance in that movie, was absolutely wonderful. So it was funny, because seeing those two movies with him, again, it's one of those things where you see an actor can do such a wide spectrum of character and portrayal and emotion. Okay, this is a talented person. And when you approach a character like the Joker, you have to have that wide range. And that's one of the reasons Heath Ledger did such an amazing job with it, because he had that wide range of character, and he had to portray that wide range. And this version of the Joker, again, this was the Joker right here. I was very comfortable with the portrayal. And, some of the criticism that goes out there with the face tattoos and the grill, and they're like kind of more hip hop and whatnot. And I was like, you know what? This Joker, though, fit society. You think about it, how the Joker's always been that character that, is he crazy, or is he crazy like a fox? Is he just this completely playing everybody and using that as a cover, or is that really who he is? Or is he not crazy, but just pure evil? Is he one of those people who just wants to watch the world burn? Who is the Joker? And there's always debates going back and forth about who the Joker is. And part of the thing that leads to the mystery in the previous incarnations is how he looked like such a clown. And you're like, well, this guy looks like a clown. He's got the goofiness. He's got the green hair, the white face, the big goofy grin. Jared Leto did that same type of goofiness to throw you off your game, but used the face tattoos, used the grill, used the more hip-hop looking Joker to throw you off your game, to not know who and what he is. There's, again, multiple scenes throughout this movie where I was like, right there, that's the Joker. Boom, spot on, he hit it. And he's one of those ones where we've got more scenes. I do want to see more scenes with him.
Agreed.
But what?
Agreed. No, I'm just agreeing with you. I'm like, yes, I want to see more scenes.
Yeah.
And I really do want to be clear on that. I want to see the scenes.
But here's the thing. I don't need to see the scenes. I thought his portrayal in this was absolutely wonderful. And I loved that we got less level of him because he's not a member of the Suicide Squad. I love the fact that they didn't make this a Joker movie. They could have very easily done that. The character that is powerful as the Joker could very easily steal the show. So I understand why they cut a bunch of extra scenes from him, because they didn't want to make this a Joker movie. And I absolutely love that. I want to see the scenes because he's a great actor and he really hit the part. But for me, this was one of those things where I'm glad they cut out those scenes, because I think it would have been too much Joker. It would have stolen the show.
The scene when Harley Quinn left the group, and when the Joker rescued her, and she left on the helicopter and Deadshot missed her, which I loved. I loved how that whole played out, because here's one of the things. You know that Deadshot's gonna miss on purpose, but sometimes knowing things are gonna happen and how it's delivered makes it that much cooler. And it was the delivery of that, because I loved that Captain Boomerang was like, nice one. I mean, just the whole thing played out so well there. I love, though, the way the swerve, where like, not really a swerve, because you knew that was a thing too, where she played dead and then she was up and laughing and then clapping up. Yeah. Everything just worked so perfectly well in that sequence. Then when the helicopter crashed, and she was kind of waiting there for the team, and they showed up on the scene. It was like the band's back together. It was such a fluid motion of events. It had the right emotional resonance because of the way it played out. If you had expanded too many scenes with the Joker and Harley in the process of getting to that, what would have happened was you would have lost that sense of, she's with this team. Joker was the guy she was with in the past. Throughout this movie, she's been developing this relationship and camaraderie with this team. You spend too much time on the two of them, you're really going to deflate that. And I thought that made that sequence where they got back together so much cooler. They handed her a badge, she went up with the team. Yeah. Every bit of it was like ba-bam, ba-bam, ba-bam. Really good movie moments that clicked. I like the way you put that. I want to see the scenes. I don't need to see the scenes. Let's go back to that Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition. There's scenes in that Ultimate version that I clearly needed to see because they improved the film for me. My fear at this point in time is adding scenes into this film will ruin, or not ruin, but it will deflate some of what I enjoyed, which was the quick pacing of this. This movie just cooked. It was really like a, whoa, what's going to happen next? Edge of the seat excitement moments. You're right. We were high-fiving during the movie, and it was very genuine. I mean, there were sequences where I'm like, I want to high-five somebody on this one, or play punch buggy. I don't know what, but I mean, like, I want to, I'm in. There's a lot of adrenaline cooking due to this film, and that part is great.
Well, you brought up the scene. Let's talk about that a little bit more. The escape rescue, the rescue scene where Joker frees Harley. One of the things about that I loved was just leading. Again, it was that build up throughout that whole process. Going into one swerve after another. A lot of times when we read a book, we have that those double whammies at the end where you get this moment that could be the end of the issue. Oh wait, you got a couple more pictures, a couple more pages. Bam! Oh, you get another big surprise. And I love when a comic does that. This movie had that moment because you have that scene where you have that great scene with Amanda Waller when they rescue Amanda Waller, and then they go up to the roof and the Joker comes in. And I loved how they led up to that moment where they're calling in the chopper. Okay, we're on the roof. They're not responding, and and they kept calling out that the chopper. They're not responding, and that's when Flag realizes, oh crud, helicopter's been compromised. And it was funny because I was right along with him, going, wait, what's going on? Because in my head, I was thinking that the Empress and her people had taken the chopper. I honestly, it was funny. I'm kicking myself for not thinking that it wasn't the Joker. Then once they started popping up, once that machine gun started going, I'm like, it's the Joker. yes. I was cheering for that scene, which, again, you could say it was predictable, but it was absolutely wonderful with, the rescue and then leading up to the missed shot. It was just an absolute just bam, 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 multiple hits within one swerve. It was that for me was something that really sold the movie and told me this is an awesome story.
Now, for me, what was great, and I want to see your thoughts on this one, this was really the last sequence we saw the Joker until the end. I'm talking about in whatever would the present time would be,
right.
the current timing in the movie. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to remember if we saw him again, even in flashbacks. We might have, depending. I don't remember.
In the dream sequence is the only time we saw him again.
Thank you. I'm like, I was going to say until the very end of the movie that was the last time that we saw him, and it wasn't entirely true. We did see him in the dream sequence. Thank you. So otherwise, I thought that was a good choice because they did the age-old comic book thing where, the Joker could be dead. We all know he wasn't dead, but I actually quite liked that because we got to focus back on the team again. And I like this team. So that was what I wanted at this point from this film. I wanted to see more of this team, see them together, see them interacting, see Harley back with the band again. Worked really well.
Oh, yeah, and you've thrown out a couple times, and I completely agree with you on the sentiment of the band's back together again. Mm-hmm. That whole sequence was absolutely wonderful because, once again, Harley let down the guard, when they weren't around, and she was actually, mourning the loss of her pudding, and you saw just that emotional, just that emotional side of her, and then she pushes it down, and you could see I love the look that Deadshot, through her. Again, once again, Will Smith, great acting. He didn't say anything. It was just the look he gave her, that saying, hey, I got your back. I'm with you here. Don't worry. It was within a half a second look, multiple things were conveyed to her. That was just, I was like, it was one of those kind of moments. And then they can give her back the bat, and just like, oh yeah, this is it. Someone's going to get busted right now, and you get cheered and you're hooping and hollering, and it was one of those things like, yes, this is the way it's going to go down. It was kind of a really cool moment.
May lightning strike me, but I think I'm going to like Ezra Miller's Flash. Because that sequence where the Flash had a cameo, if that tone in that sequence is any indication of what the tone of the Flash movie and the Flash in Justice League is going to be, I'm good with it. I'm in. And I'm saying this as a diehard fan of the Flash television series. I absolutely love it. I would have loved for Grant Gustin to be in the movie, so don't get me wrong on that end. But man, that sequence where he was in, with that cameo with Boomerang, I thought was really terrific, and I want to note that because I'm like, we hadn't really seen him except in what was a very dark sequence in Batman v Superman. So he was fun. I mean, he was having like a good time, and I liked that tone was decidedly different than Batman in his sequences, and I thought that was really important. They were showing characterization of the heroes in quick cameos.
Yeah, I've been in the Ezra Miller camp all along with this one, and like you, I agree with you. It was a darker tone in the Batman versus Superman, but he's one of those actors that I knew could pull this off, and I knew could bring a positive, fun Barry Allen light to it. Now, like you, I love Grant Gustin. He is Barry for me. He really hits it on all cylinders, but this actor I knew could pull it off just from, again, previous acting work I've seen him do. I'm like, he could do this. And then that scene with you, completely agree. Loved how he played off in Boomerang. Also loved the Justice League, trailer that was out there. The scene with him, thought that was again a great scene. I was like, okay, he's going to be a fun Flash. He's going to be a good Flash. He's going to be a very positive, energetic, light version for the team. And that's one of the things that Barry has to be. Barry has to have that energy. He has to have that positive. He has to have the hope. He is the Blue Lantern on the team, and I always go back to that when all the different team members got the different rings, Barry got hope. And that's kind of what Barry Allen is. And as we're already seeing some glimpses where we're seeing that positive energy, and that's what the Flash had. So like you, I agree. Loved the little bit in there. Thought that was a great placement, nice, quick, in and out. Quick, no pun intended. But again, really good usage of him. A nice, again, I was like very happy with that. I think that was another one we high-fived on when he showed up because, I'm pretty sure we did because like,
and the scene was so good.
Yeah.
And that's really what the key is, so it got me really excited. So I thought that was just a great cameo that got me more excited for a character. I think because I'm so into Grant Gustin that I was... Here's the thing. You can sometimes have confidence in the actor, but not confidence in the direction. And I was really worried about the direction for that character, potentially based on what we saw in Batman v Superman. Because it was only that like very dark sequence where he came through time, you were right about him and all that type of thing. There was nothing to really indicate to me. And the sequence they show of him there doesn't necessarily make him, in that hidden camera sequence, where it was a security camera.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily indicate that he's this guy of hope, good guy. So I didn't see anything in that movie that was really indicating that piece. I agree with you totally on the Justice League trailer, and this really made me go, okay, they've got it. They understand the tone for the character. Sometimes that's not always driven by the actor. Sometimes it's driven by the intention. Right. And in this case, they got it, agreeing with everything you said before, but I want to add into the fact they got a tone for this character that really works. I'm very excited about that.
Hey man, in Johns we trust. Come on, Jeff Johns now has a whatever his role is within the movie universe. It's one of those things. That's one of the things I've been hanging my hat on and thinking, okay, we're going to get a change. We're going to get a different tone, a different light in this, especially characters like the Flash. I knew we were going to get a light in because we know he's got such a love for the character. It's the same thing with, I'm really looking forward to Aquaman. I want to see what they do with Aquaman because he's another one of those characters that I love the casting. I was hooping and hollering when I saw him as Aquaman, and just the couple little bit scenes we've already seen in the trailer. I'm like, oh, okay, he's going to be kind of a cool character, and his solo movie and all this. I'm very excited for Aquaman. These are, again, I think for me, just seeing them hit Suicide Squad on such a level where it felt I've said it before, I'm going to keep saying this. It felt like the comic book. Yeah. It felt like I was reading an issue of Suicide Squad. The crazy voices I hear in my head, the images I see, the off-page images that flash, through my brain, I was seeing that on the big screen. And I was like absolutely loving the fact that it was matching up to a lot of the stuff that I love about these characters. A lot of the stuff that I'm like, yes, hooping and hollering at my desk here when I'm reading, I was getting that same excitement from the movie. So this was one of those, again, I'm very pumped about this. I'm looking forward to this. I hope to God we get a Suicide Squad too.
I want to take a little aside, then I want to jump back into the movie. I don't know if you saw any of the kind of previewy stuff. Henry Cavill this week handed out a tweet that he seemed to imply the black suit for Superman, kind of going to the death and return of Superman storyline. Whether or not that was really the intention or not, we'll see. But there was a couple of leaked shots from shooting that seemed to put Henry Cavill in a lighter color Man of Steel Superman suit. A little bit more of the blues that we're used to. Yeah. Henry had the spit curl.
Oh, nice.
I don't know what that's from. I don't know if it's from Justice League or not, or if it, it was just some cool promotional thing he did. I don't know what the intention was with that, but it was cool. It got me excited. That type of stuff, when we see that, I like him as Superman. I actually would love to see the character have the opportunity to... I feel there's a cycle being done with that character in particular, where it's leading to something, leading to the, you always do the dun da da. I think that character's primed to have that moment. I want to see that happening. The sequel to Man of Steel is definitely happening. It looks like that there's work. They were talking about it this week. There's work being done to get that movie ready. So I want to see a sequel to the Man of Steel with him. I like him as Superman.
I agree with you. I like him as Superman. And, I hooped and hollered when you said the Spit Girl's coming back just because that is that iconic look to him. Now, he didn't have it before, and it didn't take away from me against the actor portraying, because I thought he had enough of Superman in there. But it's the one thing about Superman that I do want to see is more of the light. And I'm not talking just coloring. I'm talking just the personality that Kansas farm boy, Boy Scout Superman. I did want to see more of that, and we kind of got some cool. In Batman vs Superman, we did have glimpses of it, especially when it was him and Lois interacting. And you got to see the ideological Clark Kent when he was interviewing people and researching the Batman story, and you got to see just that moral ground, and it was something that I'm like, okay, we've got they're building towards the Superman that we all like, the Superman that we've been dying to see once again up on the big screen, that Superman that Christopher Reeves really brought, and made you think, yes, this guy is Superman. I see that with him, and I don't want to say he's a Christopher Reeves clone. He's not, but that likeness, that physical presence that is Superman, that image, in your head when you hear the term Superman, that iconic imagery, that emotional spectrum that he invokes in you, just in who he is. I see them developing that, and I see that coming out now. And I want to, and that's something that for me, I really want to see. And it's more than just the dun-da-da moments. It's that personal connection, that human connection. And I'm really hoping that throughout this process, we're going to get that from him.
Yeah, I'm looking for that as well. And that's something I think I've got a lot more hope for now. I've always liked his portrayal. I've always felt that story's building to something, and I want to see the story progress. I want to see the progression. To me, if it never gets, that progression never happens, there's a wasted opportunity. I feel like I've been on a journey with him, and I like the journey quite a bit. And I'd like to see the journey lead where you want it to lead. Like, I think we're very much in sync on what our expectations are and what we'd like to see from the character. I want to see it in a journey. I'd actually like to see us logically get there and feel good about it. So I'm in for that ride. Character I'd like to talk about, if we could, is Batman. Just because I really found myself digging Ben Affleck's Batman in this movie in particular. I like that there was no Bat brand. I like that he was Batman. I mean, we got to see him do Batman-like things. See the Batmobile, the car chase, to see the stuff with Deadshot, and him just being Batman in a way where I'm like, wow, Ben Affleck is really good as him. I really enjoyed those sequences with Ben Affleck, both in and out of the costume. As Bruce Wayne and Batman, Ben Affleck sold me on his portrayal. I thought this was an even better portrayal of him as Batman than Batman v Superman.
I completely agree with you on that one. This was one of those moments where I was like, I really liked how he handled it, how he presented it. This was, again, I saw Batman. I saw Ben Affleck pulling off Batman. I saw him pulling off Bruce Wayne. I was this is the movie that makes me want to see the Batman solo project. And like you, I want it to be Batman versus Joker. I want to see that play out. I want to see where that comes down. But I do want to see him in the role as Batman. And I want to see him in the role as Bruce Wayne. You got to have an actor that pulls off both characters and both portrayals of them. Now, in Batman versus Superman, he obviously had to play both roles, but I don't want to say I didn't see a distinction, because there was differences in how he was portraying each of the characters, and he was doing it. But for me, this movie, I kind of got a vibe like the actor is comfortable with the dual persona. He's comfortable with the two roles. So having him get, the first movie done, this movie done, now going into his solo project, I want to see what he does with it, where the spotlight's on him. It's on him to pull off the very twists and turns that is Batman. I want to see that.
Can I defend him a little bit in Batman v Superman, though?
Sure.
In his... First of all, I'm going to agree with everything you're saying. This movie showed a lot more of the duality because of the fact that we got to see him really be Bruce Wayne in his interactions with Amanda Waller. Here's the problem with Batman v Superman. There wasn't really opportunity for him to showcase being Bruce Wayne, because every time we saw him as Bruce Wayne, he was really being Batman.
Yeah, he had the one party where he kind of had some Bruce Wayne moments, but in reality, he was still doing the Batman stuff. So
right.
I agree with you. It is a unfair assessment saying that he did. That's why I was hesitant to say we didn't see a variation between the two, because it really never presented the opportunity. And that's why I want to see that solo project. I want to see what he does as Bruce Wayne when he has to be Bruce Wayne.
I think we see it the same way, honestly. I think we're terming it differently. I'm more just clarifying my stance on it. I think you're right. I think we saw him a lot more as Batman in Batman v Superman, because even when that crisis was happening in the beginning, he was still Batman. Because he was rushing to the building, not as Bruce Wayne. He's not putting on the Bruce Wayne persona. He's Batman trying to save people.
Yes.
And that's not a costume thing. That's a mode you go into.
He went into bat mode on that one. And the funny thing is, he needed to do that. I had no issue with him doing it that way, because it wouldn't have fit if he had stayed in Bruce Wayne mode. He had to go into Batman mode. He had to be the guy running into the disaster, which, if you look and think about who Bruce Wayne supposedly is, that he wouldn't have done that. But he had the character had to do that. He had to portray the way he did it. And I thought, again, that was a cool scene. So I'm not knocking anything, but and we are saying the same thing, just differently, So we have the same mindset on this, and that's why I think we're both excited to see the solo project. I
agree. I loved his sequence with Amanda Waller, because it came straight from the comics. I thought it was really, really cool at the end, where he was, I know we're kind of jumping around a lot, but you almost got it when you're talking about these characters. Bruce was phenomenal. Him as Bruce in that moment.
Yeah.
Because it really was a moment where you got to see him as Bruce Wayne, but you got to see him as Bruce Wayne revealing that me and my people are going to shut you down. He turned into Batman mode again in that sequence. I love his ability to start off as Bruce Wayne and slip into Batman mode instantaneously. He did that in those sequences.
Yeah. And it was comfortable. It was a comfortable morphing. It wasn't awkward. It was second nature, and it was natural. And he needed to do it because he was up against the wall. And when you throw down with Waller, you got to be ready to at a moment's notice. And I thought that was the appropriate time for him to do that. Had he been dealing with anyone other than her, I would have been like, Bruce wouldn't have given up his secret identity that quickly. Right. But in this moment, he had to do it. So I love that sequence.
I want to see him as full on Bruce Wayne, which is I know what you're alluding to. I don't think we've seen that in either film. I would love to see sequences that afford him the opportunity to be full-on Bruce Wayne, where he has to hide the identity. I want to see what that looks like, because I think it's going to be cool.
Big time. Hey, can we talk about The Wall?
Oh, we got to.
Viola Davis, man. Oof. Oh, my God. And by the way, this was the third person. I said there was 3 castings that I will cut you if you try to say she didn't do a great job. I will 100% defend her as The Wall. I absolutely love Amanda Waller as a character. Just the nature of who she is, the fact that it's, is she, just like the Joker, is she a good guy or is she a bad guy? There is that question of who is Amanda Waller? Is she just this cold-blooded killer who happens to have a badge, or is she actually somebody who's trying to help the world and save the world? She's just willing to get her hands dirty. I love how you can't have Amanda Waller as a cut and dry character. She's got to get dirty. She's got to have pluses, minuses, where she is. There's the whole emotional and just moral spectrum that she completely goes around and around and around it. She is a government agency of government agencies. And I absolutely loved the portrayal, loved the writing, just loved the casting. This was The Wall for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really loved the sequences with her. I loved that she was the one they were seeking out on the one mission, but they didn't know they were trying to help her. Why would you reveal that? I mean, if you need to be rescued and you need it to be something that happens securely, first of all, you're not going to allude that it's you at the location, but second of all, you're certainly not going to tell the people who you put bombs in their necks. Really great stuff.
Well, and that whole sequencing, again, great moments where, when Deadshot's like, they're thinking they're saving Gandhi here, and he immediately, exactly what you're saying, threw it out there saying, why are we, she's the last person they want to see right now. And she's like, hey, I can handle this. And Amanda Waller can granted, she needed them to come and help her get out. But in the end, she is still the wall. She still is this force. And I love the fact that she never backed down. There wasn't any moments of fears, and she can look him right in the eye and say, hey, I can drop you in a heartbeat. And there was never a doubt in their minds that, yes, this woman is this dangerous. And again, and you guys call me the bad guy. I absolutely loved that scene. It was horrific and horrible, and it was, she showed herself as a bad guy, but that was such a Mando Waller moment when she's sitting there just bam, 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 bam. They weren't cleared for this. Wow. I think that was another high five moment.
I would agree with you. I think that was one of the bits that I really enjoyed as well. Honestly, every sequence with her, she added something to it. I liked when they were showing her recruiting some of the members of the squad, like her walking in with Harley Quinn. I liked that she, in certain sequences, was clearly putting herself in danger, but it was all for a means of assessing the situation and getting things under control. I really, really enjoyed that sequence. And actually, when I'm thinking about her going in during sequences like the Harley Quinn sequence, I'm thinking about that Harley Quinn sequence where she was in her cage, and that one, the cop that we all wanted to see get beat up.
Griggs,
yeah. Griggs was great. I mean, the casting of Griggs, the whole portrayal, I thought was really, really brilliant. That was Ike Barinholtz, I think, who did Griggs. Yeah. And he was phenomenal as that character, because you got to take a character like that and make him, when you're dealing with villains, you're taking a guy now who is so smarmy that you're like, I want to see the villains put a hurt on him. and pretty good there. So Harley, does that whole bit with him, and he's shocking her, and that whole, how it all went down. My favorite sequence was when Harley's being pulled out in the wheelchair, and he's like, "You're going to tell the Joker that I helped you, right?" Oh, you're so... how she was basically implying, I'm not telling him that. You're in trouble. Such a great... I think she said, "You're so dead," or something like that.
Yeah.
I forget her exact wording, but that was certainly the implication there was, I'm not going to tell him that because it'd be funnier not to.
Actually, I took it that she was going to tell the Joker what he did. Everything that he did.
Oh, yeah.
Think about all the nasty stuff. Yeah, she's going to tell him, hey, yeah, he helped me. He gave me this thing. But here's the other stuff he did. So it was with the Joker, it's not about, hey, I did this thing, I did this favor for you. What have you completely done? What is your complete relationship? She was going to tell Joker everything that this guy did. So that was, to me, was what she was saying. It wasn't
really?
just, I'm not going to tell him you helped. I'm going to tell him everything you did.
I don't see that, her being the tattletale in that bit. I see her sticking it to him more by playing a joke on him and letting that joke play out. It's interesting because I think this is an interesting philosophical debate with Harley. Because I get why you're going there and all that, and I think with a normal person, they would do that. In her case, she just wouldn't tell the Joker she'd tell the Joker something like, "He didn't help me at all," and then let the eggs break where they will. I think we're both seeing the same outcome, though. That guy's in trouble. I mean, the Joker would really put a hurt on him, and I still want to see that.
I know.
Here's the thing: if that was a cut scene.
Add it, please.
Yes. That's an example of a scene I do want to see in the movie.
Yes.
The fall of Griggs.
Well, it's kind of like the movie Happy Gilmore, where the Ben Stiller character, who was the guy in the nursing home that was tormenting Adam Sandler's sweet grandma. You wanted to see the scene where Happy just beats the holy heck out of that guy and just, basically teaches him a lesson for being mean to his sweet grandmother. And in the theater, you never got to see the scene. And then I remember walking out of the movie going, dang it, man, I wanted to see Happy kick that dude's butt. And to the point where I think the internet, kind of raved about that. And eventually they did film the scene and make it, later on and added it in as an extra into the DVD or something. So there's a scene out there where you get to see Happy get a piece of him. I had that same reaction with Griggs. I so wanted to see him get hurt. I so wanted to see what the Joker would do to him or what Harley would do to him.
Captain Boomerang. Let's talk about that casting a little bit, because I really loved the portrayal of the character. I liked the fact that he didn't seem to play well with others, but yet there was this villain camaraderie that happened. Because this is a guy who's also a part of the Rogues. So there's an interesting sort of relationship there with this character. One of my favorite sequences, I think, in the whole thing was when the team made the decision, when Deadshot found the file that Rick Flag had, to go into the bar together. And you got to see, like, they all kind of followed suit and went and hung out together. And that sense of community that came out of this, it's everything that I like about the Squad. It's also everything I like about Secret Six. This sense of, yeah, they're villains, but they're also a family. I liked how that played out.
See, that bar scene had sequences that were cut. And the reason I know that is because one of the trailers has a scene from that bar that wasn't actually in the movie. So there's more scenes in that bar that got cut. And I'm guessing they probably cut that due to time. Just because there was some but there was probably some really cool bonding moments of the team in the bar. And that's something I wish we could have, because I would have liked a little bit more of Boomerang in the movie. Because it's part of the problem when you have such a large cast and so many different characters that you have to introduce, develop, and then see through fruition on the characters. Is some of the characters get less time. And for me, Boomerang, I wish we could have gotten more. And that's something I wish we could have gotten just, and not even just, I liked the character. I thought he was a good character. He had that nice smarmy weaselness that he did with Slipknot to, hey, let's test these neck bombs, but not put myself in any danger. Absolutely loved that portrayal of Boomerang and how he did it and why he did what he did. Again, it was something that was a neat thing that if we could have gotten a little bit more from Boomerang, I would have been happier.
El Diablo. And having him in the film, I think, was a really good choice. I loved how he was kind of running away from himself. Very dark story. In a film that was pretty light in its tone overall. And I've heard that one of the things they did in their edits or cutting or changes was they reshot certain sequences, re-edited certain sequences, so the tone was changed because of the reception of the Batman v Superman tone. I think it was a good choice. Here's the only reason why I say that. That certainly was a very dark sequence of events, and I don't know that I needed a whole movie of it because this movie was fun. I actually really liked it. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is I liked the sharp contrast of that character to the others. And I liked how Harley addressed him.
I absolutely loved, Diablo in this. Yeah, again, it's, the direction that his character went and how he sacrificed himself for the team, you kind of saw that coming. I didn't want it to happen, but I kind of saw it coming. But I liked how they really played up who he was, and it made sense for him to say, you know what? I have to make atonement for what I've done. Here's how I'm going to make atonement. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I have to do for it. And I thought that was a great, he was one of those characters. It was a great buildup where you kept getting flashes of the power. And then when they needed him to go full on fire god mode, he kicks it to 11. I thought for me was a great way to play out the story. Introduction of the character, development, where you see the tragedy and the torment that he went through. And then he goes out, pardon the pun, in a blaze of glory. It was a great way to play out this character. I wish there was some way he could have been spared because, again, he was a cool character, but I like that we had a body count in Suicide Squad. You need to have people die. It's unfortunate. It's the nature of the comic, the nature of the title, but the fact that they let him play it out and they actually gave the character a full story, and it was something that was a really cool, powerful message.
I agree with you. I think the character having a full story, the fact that I followed the whole thing, I thought his attitude was very consistent. I've always liked in the comics when the characters kind of shied away from using his powers at first, but then you see he's far more powerful than anyone really realizes. Yeah. That whole bit was great. I love that it was a sequence at the end was kind of his redemption story, and it just all played out well. So now speaking of redemption stories, I think we should take a look at the Enchantress Rick Flag story overall. What did you think about that? What did you think about the casting?
The casting I thought was spot on. I thought that was a really good, again, this was one that, with Kara, whatever, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but I didn't know who she was or anything about her, so I didn't know how she was going to portray the role. The Rick Flag character, I've seen him do a couple stuff, so I'm like, okay, he can probably pull off the physical role of Rick Flag. And just, this was a story that I didn't know really anything. I didn't know what they were going to do in the movie or how they were going to play them together. But I like the on-screen chemistry. I think if you're going to have two people who are supposed to be in love, they should actually make me think there's something going on there. And I think that was a really good, it was a really good kind of having a nice love story thrown in there, and just the way it was a nice balance of darkness and light, and him just, being that soldier that he had to be, in the final moments, you think about it, when he gives Enchantress bring back June, and she's like, no, and he crushes the heart and thinking he killed the woman he loves. That for me was a wonderful, powerful moment, because once again, it goes back to earlier moments when June's saying, hey, if you got to choose between me and taking out the Enchantress, kill her. And then going back to the soldier who's going to do what he needs to do. It's about the honor and about the duty that he has to. He has to save the world. There's some things more important than that. And I love the fact that he took the shot and he had to take her out. I thought that, for me, again, a great story, beginning, middle, end, build up, really nice, powerful portrayal of it.
He had a tough role because you got to play him pretty dry, because he's a dry character. And he's a character that needs to be on a team, but he's got a purpose on the team. He's supposed to be the straight man, in the insanity. And he played it really, really well, which was interesting about the characters. I'm like, wow, he's really true to the comics, too, because Rick Flag is a pretty dry character overall. And I thought that was really a good choice to play that. It's hard to do and pull off. You can only really get away with it on that level when you're doing an ensemble cast, because otherwise you're going to lose people. It's kind of like, dude's a little too dry for his own solo film, but he's perfect for this.
One of the things I did like about him, he did have the believability of military presence for me.
Agreed.
And that's something that, whenever I see a movie, I am a little bit more critical of any of the times they have like a military or a law enforcement type of character, because in my head I got this persona of what a person who is special forces, who is this level of training that Rick Flag is, he's going to have a presence to him. He's going to have a strength that is just out there that you can see, but it's not going to be over the top, hoorah military. This isn't just your regular everyday military guy. This is a special operations person. This is somebody who does the black ops, who's does some questionable moral. He has to make some questionable moral calls, and I like the fact that we got that grit in Rick Flag, and we got to see him, portray, where he has, crossed the line, where he's had to in the name of the mission. That scene we went back to with Waller when she guns down all the people. He didn't have an issue with that. Why? He's had to do that as well. He recognized why she did it and what she did it for. And I thought that for me was a great scene because he didn't come across as being evil. He came across as being, yeah, I get you. I've had to do that. I understand where you're coming from that. But he did recognize that wasn't a good thing. He recognized that was darkness. He recognized that was not, a hero way of acting. But sometimes you got to get some blood on your hands. I thought that for me is a great portrayal of this type of character.
So the whole Enchantress sequence and the duality of the Enchantress, I liked that in certain moments in the Enchantress role, she seemed otherworldly. And she did talk about duality, we were talking about it earlier. I honestly think that she did an even better job of playing the Enchantress than she did June Moon, the alter ego, who's supposed to be kind of dry like Rick Flag, too. I thought, when I say dry in this case, I think in other movies I would say that as a criticism. In this one, that was the nature of their roles in those sequences, in those particular parts. And you almost needed that, like the dry, everything is perfect, life is grand kind of thing with a twist. and that's where I think you needed to be a straight person there to make that twist work.
And I loved that sequence and when we first see the Enchantress come out, and when she's sitting in her hand and the other hand comes up and holds and then flips over, and just the way they did the special effects, the transformation from June Moon to Enchantress was absolutely wonderful. That was one that first saw, I was like, oh, and second time I saw it in 3D. And I was glad I'm able to watch 3D movies again because of that sequence. That was a really great kind of just that transformation and just that whole sequence when dealing with the Joint Chiefs and that first introduction of who and what the Enchantress is. I thought that sequence was absolutely wonderful in that it had a beautiful creepiness with some humor. And the humor didn't take away from the creepiness. When she's sitting there, the Admiral's like, please don't have her touch me. Please don't have her touch me. Both times I saw that, I chuckled. But it didn't take away from her creepiness. It didn't take away from the power of the scene, but to have that comedic moment.
And you were right on that. The comedic moments were well timed. I think when you had certain characters, it's a lot easier to do more with comedy. But even so with Harley Quinn, I thought they did a nice job of recognizing when to be judicious with it and when to go over the top with it. Because I think there's both that's needed with Harley Quinn to understand all the facets of her character. And I thought that was really well handled with her, too, where the comedy didn't overshadow the development of the character.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That for me is one of the things I absolutely loved about her portrayal of Harley Quinn. That it had that combination of the creepy, crazy, beautiful, comedic moments, and that fine balance of neither one part could have overshadowed the other and could have ruined it. But you have to have that nice blend and balance where she goes from laughing and joking to "I'm now going to gut you like a fish" to back to laughing. Back to being crazy, back to gutting you, and just that blending of just that persona. Again, it's that multiple personality persona of, is Harley Quinn a multiple personality of Harleen Quinzel, or did Harleen Quinzel actually go crazy? And there's only one person there. I love that exploration with Harley, where who is Harley? Is she Harleen, or is she Harley? Is she something else?
That part was really great on that end, because you're right. There was this sense of there's something more to her. That was a part of it that I think is great. Like, this movie left me for a number of the characters in it anticipating what more can we learn about them. And I like the way you phrased that, because I started thinking the same way about those characters too. Killer Croc?
Hey, come on. AAA. Yeah, and I say AAA because I can't pronounce his name, and I'm not going to butcher it, because I actually respect him as an actor, because I've seen him in enough stuff that I'm like, this guy can act. This guy is amazing actor. So I call him AAA out of respect. Killer Croc is one of those characters I wish we had more sequences on. I wish, we had more stuff on him. We had more interaction on him. And I love the fact that they didn't go a CGI Croc face with him, and they actually went with a mask. But, and again, this is my not having knowledge on masks and makeup and whatnot. I wish there's some way they could have, tweaked the costume so we could have gotten more acting, more, facial expressions, more reaction out of him. Because as I said, he's an amazing actor, and I wish we could have gotten a little bit more, from tweaking the way the costume was designed, making it so we could let the actor underneath really come out. There was moments where you got to see Croc, you got to see him do what he did, but I think that actor could have done even more if he would have been able to have more of a reactionary type of non-verbal emotional responses.
Would you prefer to see that embedded in this film, or as like a short attached to like the beginning of the movie? Or there's a lot of things, like you've mentioned a few things now that you've liked to see characters and expanded sequences and things like that. I actually agree with you on everything you're saying there. The sentiment that I want to see this character more, I want to know more about this character, I want to do that. I don't know that I want them in this issue. You mentioned issues earlier,
right?
I want to see those various elements of backstory and things like that, but they're almost, to me, each one's a different spotlight issue.
Exactly.
And I would like to see everything you're saying, but I don't necessarily want them shoved into the wrong issue. if I'm making any sense with your analogies, but I really liked your analogy that this felt like a comic book as you were watching it, and it had certain sequences to them that clearly felt like this was first issue, this is the second issue, the third issue, in its tone and presentation. I wouldn't have wanted one of those crammed into any of these issues.
And I agree with you, and it's funny because I'm sitting there, as I'm saying, I want more of this, but the pacing and the way they laid out, this was a 4-issue story arc, completely beginning, middle, end, etc. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking, after the 4-issue after the 4-issue story arc, we get a one-shot Killer Croc issue. We get a one-shot Captain Boomerang. We get a little bit more fleshing out. We get a one-shot The Fate of Griggs. We get all that kind of stuff, and that's the what I would like to see. And again, you can't unfortunately put it in the movie. So I'm not, all my wishing we had more isn't a knock on the movie, and I know you don't think I'm saying that, but it's just something that again, this is part of my excitement for why they could do another Suicide Squad movie, why they could do something else. They could actually do the Suicide Squad movie number 2 could be a series of one-shots on the characters. Instead of trying to do another large overarching story, let's get a Killer Croc story. Let's get a Boomerang. Let's get another, Deadshot story, whether it's Deadshot before he's in the squad, Deadshot after he's squad, maybe Deadshot and Rick Flag and Katana go after Harley. That instead of being a full-on Suicide Squad, it's the three of them. And while that's going on, you've got the Killer Croc story, you've got the Boomerang story, you've got whatever somebody else story. It's the second movie they could actually take these things and do something different. Normally, when you think a movie, you're like, okay, you have to have this big battle, this big sequence. No, let's do some series of small movies, kind of like Pulp Fiction. I love that movie because it had this story and this story and this story and this story. And it was all in a giant overarching story arc, but it had those different focuses. They could really do a Pulp Fiction style movie with the Suicide Squad. And I think that would be something that would really just kick it into another level.
Yeah, your Pulp Fiction analogy is a really good one. I like that idea a lot more than some of the other choices that as far as how to add them in, because I love that movie for what it did really well in sequences and things like that. So that's a great analogy for that one, as far as what I would like to see as well. Honestly, in the end, there's a lot of this stuff that deleted scenes is for me the best route to go, just because I'm very protective of this movie.
Yeah.
And it's because I really enjoyed it. And it's not one of the things on the show, we've gotten accused of in the past is the fact that, you guys love everything. No, we choose topics to talk about that we love and we're interested in. We don't love everything. We don't talk about everything. In this case, I couldn't have been more excited to talk about this film because I genuinely loved it. Not because it was a DC movie, just because it was a fun movie. I mean, the fact that here's the thing with that kind of stuff, the fact that it's a DC movie is a bonus. I'll give a straight example, sci-fi. I'm a big sci-fi fan. Love sci-fi. Loved it since I was a kid. Star Wars The Force Awakens was a bonus for me because I love Star Wars. And it wound up being such a home run hit. I thought it was a great sci-fi movie, a terrific Star Wars movie. and on both ends, it hit full thrusters where I was walking out grinning in every opportunity. The same applies with DC movies with me. If it's a good movie, it's a good movie. Batman v Superman was a good movie. The Ultimate Edition was the great movie. This was a great... If I'm putting them on a scale, taking just those three movies right now out of the initial DC, live-action film releases, I would go on the bottom of it, Batman v Superman. Because I thought that version was good. I stand behind every comment I made in the show. This edges that out. And unfortunately, this is where I'm going to be cheating a bit. It either ties the Ultimate Edition or surpasses it. And I don't have a good answer for you on that one right now, only because I need to see Suicide Squad again.
Yeah.
And for me right now, though, as far as out of the two initial DC releases, this one's giving the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman, which is that's the only edition I'm rating anymore. The baseline of that is making me really, really think. Suicide Squad, if it doesn't edge it out, it's tying.
Yeah, I know. That's a tough call because I agree with you. Theatrical release of Batman versus Superman's at the bottom. then the question is, the Suicide Theater release beat the Ultimate Edition of Batman versus Superman? And I gotta say, I'm gonna say Suicide Squad's edging it just slightly. And the reason I'm gonna say it's edging it slightly is because, I think for me, there was a lot, even though the Ultimate Edition of Batman Superman was an A+ for me. That was an A+. Suicide Squad, I walked out of it saying this is an A+. This is an absolute. I was so pumped and excited for it. I wanted to turn around and get back in line again, I wanted to see it again right then and there. Bam! I've seen Batman Superman Ultimate again, but even though when I saw that first, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a good movie. I didn't have to turn around and say, I got to watch it one more time. I just watched it the one time and then later watch it again. Suicide Squad, I wanted to watch it again. And I saw it again in the movie theater. And it was funny because I was thinking this weekend I may see it again just because I'm like, I don't know, do I want to see a movie? Part of me wants to go back in the theater and see it one more time on the big screen and have one more good big screen experience before I watch it again at home. So it's, for me, Suicide Squad is edging the Ultimate Edition on Batman versus Superman.
Would you see Suicide Squad? I'm making up new words. Would you see Suicide Squad in the theater again in 3D or standard? Because you and I both saw it both. When we were together, that 6:05 showing was only in standard, without the 3D. We both saw it again and saw it in 3D, which I greatly enjoyed. I would have trouble answering that question myself.
That's a tough one, man.
Because such a good movie.
The theater by me has those D boxes where it's the rumble seat.
Sure.
That's what I want to see it in, because I want to have that, because that's what I saw Batman versus Superman in. And I was like, that was kind of cool, and I wanted, but I haven't, but the theater, it doesn't look like they're doing that for Suicide Squad, which I'm like, why? This would be a perfect movie for that. So that's what I kind of want to see it. Or there's another theater on the west side that I may go to that people are telling me, oh, you got to see that one. That's a great big, really cool sound and yada, yada. So I may see it at that other one. And in that case, it all depends on what time I can get there and what's available at that time, etc. So both way, I want to see it, for me right now, it doesn't matter seeing it which way. I do want to see it again. Part of me thinks if 3D is available, for when I'm going, I'll probably go 3D just because that was a really cool experience. But if 3D is not available in my window, my opportunity window, then I will see it again in 2D.
There's two more characters that we have to talk about in particular, at least from my list. And, I really wanted to think about this one because it's a well-known DC character. It's a beloved DC character. And somebody who I think every time you saw this character on screen, it, resonated, how true to the portrayal of the character. I mean, you know where I'm going with this. It's Panda Man. Panda Man was great. I loved that. I don't know why I was so fixated on that, but it was such a Joker thing. I loved that the Joker had a recognizable gang, and that you saw Panda Man more than once in the film. And here's the thing: if there's extra sequences with the Joker and his gang, and Panda Man's part of it, I might trump myself and say, you know what, you can plug those back in the movie as long as I get to see more Panda Man, because it made sense that the Joker would have that kind of character as a sidekick. Panda Man.
Oh, yeah. Come on. Panda Man. And I knew that's where you were going with it. I was like, okay, who's it? Okay, Panda Man. Yeah. I remember reading the IMDb on this before seeing the movie, and I saw Panda Man, and I'm like, who the hell is Panda Man? And, well, we got to, again, it fit. And you know what? Kept the comedic moments, but didn't take away from the creepiness of the Joker. You think back to that scene when they're breaking into that lab, when Joker's breaking into the lab that designed the neck bombs, and he's got the doctor and he's sitting there behind the glass and all that stuff. And just again, this was the moment, one of those Jared Leto moments that said, this is the Joker. Because you have that kind of goofiness going on. You have the chaos, but then he just holds up the image of the guy, the tablet that has the guy's wife there. And she's like, just do whatever he says. But you see the terror look in her eyes. That was wonderful. But for me, the point that sold it was the look on the Joker's face. All goofiness, all comical, anything that could completely take away from a moment was gone. And you saw just that evil darkness, crazy nastiness that is the Joker in Jared Leto's eyes. You saw it on him. You saw him, and I was like, right there, that's the Joker look. You throw away every other goofiness, anything you have crazy, things that you don't like about the way the character is being portrayed, but right there and then, that is the Joker. And I love that sequence because, one, it did show his strategery in that he was able to get the guy to do what he wants, but it also showed that the Joker isn't just goofy. There's something more inside there.
That part is, and I totally agree with you on that part. One of the second character is really my serious one. I'm not necessarily not telling the truth about Panda Man. I really did enjoy that. But Kitana. Yeah. Because there was a little controversy with that, I think, with the portrayal or the use of Kitana. Was it a waste or anything like that? I really enjoyed the character. And the character was, I kind of put Kitana in the cameo category in her use, but I thought her use was really strong in this. I loved the fact that the husband being trapped in the soul sword was a thing, and I liked how they used that in the movie. I would have certainly liked to have seen more with her, but I think what happens with her is a lot of what happens with characters like Killer Croc and Boomerang and stuff like that. You gotta focus the movie at some point on spotlighting some of the characters a little bit more so we get to know them. And that leaves room for a sequel where you see additional characters fleshed out along the way. And certainly Kitana falls in the category where I wanted to see more. Killer Croc, I wanted to see more. There's characters I just wanted to see more of, but I don't necessarily feel you could have done it in this movie. You mentioned one-shots, second miniseries, all of those things. That's a character who I certainly would have liked to have seen more of, but did like the portrayal.
Oh, God, yeah. The thing I like the fact that they're going with the husband trapped in the soul, his soul trapped in the sword, and they actually really let you believe, yes, that is going on. Not, because sometimes with Kitana, there's been a portrayal, is the soul actually captured in the sword, or is she just a little bit nuts? And I was worried when I saw Kitana that they were going to go that route with it. Because I do like the mystic nature of the soul sword. I do like the fact that the husband is trapped in there and that she communicates with him. I'm glad they pulled that scene in, and you got that one moment when she's sitting there talking to the sword and talking to the husband, and Rick explains to it, and you can see him just very calmly saying, yeah, that's the deal. He's not, it's not crazy, it's nothing, that's just the way it is. And again, the team accepts that because they are who they are. So this is something that they would, come to terms with and not think twice of. And I like the fact that it was in there. It didn't take too much time, but like she's a character that I wish we could have gotten a little bit more on, or we can see more of the character, more development later on. Definitely, I like the flashback sequence where she's taking out the one Yakuza boss, but I did, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more of her just opening up and just trashing and just being this force of, destruction, because, the actress, physically had a great presence to her. So it's one of those things where if the actress can physically pull it off, I'd like to see them really throw down and dance, and really just give us, it's like when seeing Harley fight, she really knew what she was doing. Will Smith, physical presence of Deadshot, really hit it on all nails. Kitana, we got to see some cool, sequences with the sword. We got to see her throw down, but again, I wish we could have had some little bit more fleshed out fight sequences where she really just unloads on an epic level.
I agree with you. That's one of the things that I think there were a number of characters that I wanted to see more out of. I liked certain things they did with them, and I liked how they set things up. I really want a sequel to address all these things, though. I want to see everything that we're talking about here. I want to see them in a sequel, because I really felt like this movie really made great use of its time. I wanted to see a sequel. It actually brings me to my next topic. Is there anything actually from this film, as far as talking about, or just kind of a chat about this film in general proper, that you want to get to that I've missed, Jim? Because what I want to talk about next.
Well, there's something I do want to talk about that I actually really liked about the movie, and it was something I realized on later on. When Enchantress turns all those people into her minions and they become her slaves and they're part of the army and all that, they kind of take on that Rock type of persona. And I liked how they did that. At the time when I was watching the movie, I didn't think too much of it. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, taking over the body, yada, yada, ancient, evil, okay. But then as I started thinking about it, something triggered in my head. Think of all those combat sequences when they're bashing heads and they're cutting them up and shooting. If those were actual people, we would have seen blood splatter. It would have gotten gory to a whole nother level. But because they were rock creatures, we're just seeing the rocks fly off. We're just seeing that. So they could actually take, and that is one of the ways they kept this at a PG-13 rating. And I was like, it was something I was like, damn, that for me was something that was really spectacular about the movie, that we did get this violence. We did get the bashing. We did get some really cool fight sequences, but they didn't take it over the level to change the rating because it was just rocks flying. It wasn't blood and brain fragments. And I thought for me, that was something I really liked in this movie.
I did too. Yeah, I didn't have any issue with that at all. I thought there was a lot of great cartoony mayhem. I liked the fact that there were elements of it that felt like a lot like a cartoon.
Yeah.
And I, for some reason, Suicide Squad to me should have, with this cast of characters, should have that kind of feel to it. Yet there were moments where it got really dark. There's moments where it got philosophical and deep. I think it spent a lot of time on a lot of different things that I thought were interesting, and yet didn't lose the fun fact. There was a fun factor to this. I really think that movies are sometimes afraid to have fun and somehow get diminished when they do it. This was fun. I mean, I really, really had, I smiled when I left and felt like I had a good time. And that's pretty important to me. The epilogues all led to more fun.
Yeah.
Versus taken away from it. And I thought they really paced and delivered a full story that was well. And can I go to my next? You know where we're going with this topic-wise. Can I just go to it?
Go to it.
All right, this is bringing me to an issue because it's out there. People have been talking about this a lot. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not by my nature, and I don't know that I necessarily feel any of this is a conspiracy. But I think it's a topic that's being addressed lately, and I think there's a point to talking about it because there's clearly something going on. This thing with DC movies, I mean, it happened with Batman v Superman. It happened with this, and it's happening now with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, there was things leaked that Wonder Woman's a mess now, and all that type of thing. And, it's really to the point where this is DC movies that this seems to be all targeted at. And I don't know that I consider it necessarily DC movies have a conspiracy against them, but there's certainly a stigma that seems to be naturally there where it's getting a certain amount of criticism and critical eye drawn towards it before it's even released. And Suicide Squad had this, Batman v Superman had it before it, Wonder Woman now is getting it. And it's pretty far out before they're releasing that. I'm like, what is going on? Because I'll be honest with you, this movie got a ton of criticism that I think is completely unwarranted. It was good fun. Batman v Superman, we talked about it on the show, and I still stand by. I agree why that movie was polarizing. I could see why people would feel the tone in that would do that. The Ultimate Edition, for me, made that a great movie. I would defend the Ultimate Edition a lot more strongly, and I was a big advocate of it on the episode. I would have been unwavering with the Ultimate Edition. But I still would say this in both cases. Tone, I can understand being an issue for some people. This movie, I don't get it at all. There's criticisms of this movie I just don't get. It's like, how can you be a comic fan like Suicide Squad and not like this movie? I don't get it. I really don't with this one. That's where I'm starting to think, I don't want to say conspiracy because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm really not. But I do think it's become popular now to jump on the bandwagon of yet another DC movie failure. I'm really afraid of that stigma because I'm afraid that people, reviewers in particular, are jumping on that. I think the reason why is because then we have an internet community that jumps on it as well and bashes it further. Batman v Superman does not deserve the Rotten Tomatoes score it got. I just say it was such an abysmal movie, the way that tomato score does. I'm like, oh, come on. What movie did you see that I didn't? The Wonder Woman sequences alone should put it at least in mid-range. I mean, come on. So I don't agree with that. This movie, though, I'm sad because I feel the stigma attached to it did it in the box office far too soon.
Yes. And everyone, it's like the non-comic book people aren't going to see this movie because of all the criticism, because of all that stuff. And I am a conspiracy theorist, and I'm comfortable with saying that I think there is an attack going against DC. Now, is this a planned attack by Marvel? That I can't say, that I don't know if it is. But there is, I think, an open planned attack against DC being done by, whether it's by people in the movie industry, whether it's by fan base, whether it's by just critics, or whether it's by wannabe critics. There are a lot of people out there that are wannabe critics, and it's people who want to say, look at me, I've got this opinion. Hey, look at me. Now, if you're saying you like something, you're not going to get the attention. So they want the attention, so they're going to bash it and they're going to attack it. And I think people are being, unnecessarily cruel on this. Now, the Marvel side movies, I think, have some protection on them just because they've been so popular and they're doing so well. So if you're going to be a negative person, if you want that negative attention, you're not going to really go after the Marvel because people aren't going to, people are going to attack you. However, DC is that nice, soft target. I think people are intentionally going after this and intentionally saying negative stuff about it even before it hits. When your movie has a negative rating before the opening night, there's something messed up with the system. Rotten Tomatoes came about because the regular everyday moviegoers hated the professional critics' comment. They're like, hey, we want something for us. We want something that we say is. And when it first came out, Rotten Tomatoes was wonderful. It was absolutely this great website that was about the people and gave us a voice and let people know, hey, forget what these fancy pantsers are saying. This is a great movie. It's got big, explosions and robots and whatnot. This is awesome. That was what Rotten Tomatoes was created for. Well, now they've turned it against it. Now it's just as unreliable as any professional critic out there because of the hate mongers, because of these people who, whether it's out of boredom, whether it's out of spite, whether it's out of I don't know what, they're intentionally attacking stuff and giving negative ratings just to give it a negative rating, just to ruin something before it comes out. Instead of giving an honest assessment, instead of giving an honest opinion, they're intentionally attacking it. And you mentioned Wonder Woman. I'm like, I want to find those people and I want to lay a smackdown on them because everything I've seen so far on that has me going, oh my God. And it's funny, I was doing some IMDb research and just some general internet research on some of the castings. And in the Wonder Woman movie, I'm finding a lot of the actors and who are portraying the different Amazons are stunt people, martial artists. Even Gal Gadot was former military. So they're taking this physical presence of what are the Amazons. They're going to make this a physical movie. Those action sequences we saw in Batman versus Superman, those are going to translate into the Wonder Woman movie. So those great scenes from the movie that we had, we're going to get a continuation of those. We're going to get a physical presence. And right now, from everything I've seen, I've got zero issue whatsoever with the Wonder Woman. And anybody who's criticizing and saying, oh, it's going to be terrible, what the hell? How can you actually and honestly say that when the movie's not even done yet? You can criticize me for saying it's going to be wonderful because I haven't seen it yet, because I am making a lot of generalizations. And I admit I am making generalizations, but I'm also making generalizations on the excitement level of what I'm anticipating this is going to be just because of what little I've seen. I'm getting these tastes, I'm getting these teasers, and that's what a teaser should do. A teaser should pump you up and should get you excited. And I'm having that exact reaction that we're getting. And then on top of that, I'm looking going, okay, yeah, this makes sense. We're going to get some physical stuff. because we're seeing people who can take a bump. If you got an actress who can take a bump who also looks good while doing it, I'm like, okay, we have an Amazon. In my head, that's a definition of an Amazon. And I'm very, thrilled and excited to see what they're going to produce out of the Wonder Woman movie.
And this isn't me contradicting you, so please, I want to clarify that. It's more sharing what my feeling is on the whole thing, because I don't think it's a conspiracy against DC. And that's not saying you're wrong to have that opinion. Have your opinion, and because I'm speculating too. So I want to clarify that. I think what I look at it as, and it's kind of part of the reason why, if you look at kind of my philosophy on, when we started Raging Bullets, what I was trying to do when we started, you jumped on board in your own way. You're not cookie cutter by any stretch to my own philosophy. But as friends, I think you and I share similar philosophies about certain things, and I think that's why we like doing this show together. But what bothers me is the fact that openly destroying something before it has an opportunity to be viewed by the public. I like movie reviewers. I referenced on the show previously Joanna Connors from The Plain Dealer, who, I read Joanna Connors' reviews, and a lot of times films that I like, Joanna Connors has never liked. And I'm okay with that. I enjoy that. I never felt that Joanna Connors was openly destroying and trying to bring down a movie. We've got that now going on with films. The new Ghostbusters is a great example of that, where I like the actresses that are in it. I really was excited about going to see it. There was so much of a negative vibe building up to it that I was like, man, I'm to the point where I'm forgetting why I want to go see it. And that's sad, because it took me away from seeing a movie. I'm going to go see it. I am. I'm going to see it. I'll probably have it at home or rent it or something like that. Or if, iTunes does a deal, for, it's when it's released, if there's some kind of deal, I'll grab it then. I will see it because I'm interested in seeing it. But it did take away from my excitement and interest of going to see it. And I think that's part of the problem of what we got going on right now. It's kind of when we were philosophically spearheading with Raging Bullets, when we did it, was this idea of, what does this need to destroy comic books? That, if you don't like it, move along. The bashing that goes on with these films they're big ticket. They cost a lot of money. By doing that, you're derailing something that potentially could have a fan base that would really dig it. I've never walked out of a movie and felt this need to go on a tirade. There's a lot of movies that I've seen that I've been like, that was a good film. I don't need to see it again. I'm glad I went to go see it. I went to go see it because there was something about it that interested me enough to buy the ticket and sit down and go see it. That's kind of what I call popcorn flick. Afternoon, fun movie. Fine. I don't need to own this or see it again. If it happens to be on TV, I may watch it again, may not. If it wasn't really my cup of tea, I can appreciate the cinematography, some of the acting in it, things like that, and also recognize that I don't need to see it again. But that's kind of it. Because movies are an art form, very much like comics, where I can recognize that a film that wasn't made for me may be somebody else's favorite film. I could make it, if I'm sitting there and having a commentary about it, I can say, it really wasn't my cup of tea. I would have that conversation openly and certainly would do it, on a podcast or something like that. But I wouldn't do it with the lens of, my God, what a waste of my time. I haven't had that experience with film. I don't know if you have. I guess my film going experience is very similar to comics, and I hate seeing film bashed to the point where it's clear something that's cost millions and millions of dollars has been brought down by snark before it's even been released.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify a couple stuff that I did say just to make sure. I'm not saying every single person that's bashing this movie is they're intending on going anti-DC. Okay. I'm not saying that, because there are people who they're going to see this, say, I disagree with you, Jim. I didn't like it. Here's why. Those are the people, hey, you got your opinion. That's cool. You know, like the radio show I listened to, I liked them. I listened to them. I still listen to them. They and I fundamentally disagree on this movie. You know, and again, it was one of those things where I was trying to understand their point, and they vocalized their point. So I'm not saying they're attacking. Like my niece Cassie, there's stuff on this movie she didn't like, and she and I had this really cool conversation about why I liked it, and she didn't. You know, there's this different stuff, and it was just, again, you know, people are going to have these different opinions. But in my head, I do think there are people out there who are intentionally targeting DC. And I think, you know, and maybe it's even not even fair to say they're intentionally targeting DC. Maybe it's they're intentionally targeting hate. Maybe they just want to attack. There's a lot of negativity on the internet, and that's something you and I have been very anti-attack mentality, just because, you know, we're not the negative people. We don't dance in that way. You know, we're about raging about what we love, not raging about what we hate. And out there on the internet, because there's so many people out there, it's the negative, it's the darkness that gets all the attention. Squeaky wheel gets the grease, you know, so the people who are louder, they're nastier, they're meaner, they're getting out there. And I think it's spreading, and it's partially, you know, it's the internet culture, it's the immediate response to see something. You know, you see, you know, right now, this day and age, we could send a direct tweet to Will Smith saying, "Hey, I loved your movie," or we can send a tweet saying you were terrible in the movie. We have that direct one-on-one contact that we can make with these people via the internet. And I think that mindset, that easy accessibility to these movies, to the people, to people on other side of the world as to what's going on with this movie, has brought out the darkness in people, has brought out just that the viper and the venom that they have. And I think that's something, when I'm saying a direct attack, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. People are looking for a soft target. They're looking for something we can trash. What can we go after? Oh, Ben Affleck, he's an easy target. You know, what's her name from the Twilight movies? Kristen Stewart. Mm-hmm. She's a big time. People are constantly attacking her, and I think she's a really good actress. I like her portrayals in a lot of the different movies she's done, but she's one who constantly is getting attacked, who's constantly getting negative stuff said about her. I think that is what I'm talking about when I'm saying there is a conspiracy conscious attack going after what people are perceiving as soft targets. People are seeing these movies as soft targets. No one knew who the Suicide Squad was, so you have an easy in. It's a DC movie. Okay, we can hit it again. Oh, again, Ben Affleck's in it. All right, let's attack. You know, it's a Joker, but it's not Jack Nicklaus. Hey, let's attack. You know, it's not Heath Ledger. Let's attack. You know, there's things they're saying we can attack on this movie, so they're going after it. You know, and I think that for me is where I'm saying there's a definite conspiracy against them.
Yeah, we're probably not so far off then, because what I meant before by stigma is, I think because Batman v Superman had a stigma, you know, associated with it, it's now bled over to Suicide Squad. It's now, and then conversely bleeding over now to Wonder Woman, where these movies are being unnecessarily linked together instead of being their own viewing experiences. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Okay, Batman v Superman, you had a tone issue with it or something like that. It wasn't your cup of tea. Why does that mean Suicide Squad's a problem? Why does that mean Wonder Woman's a problem? I don't know. I have a problem with that. Ghostbusters, I'm using that one as an example. Okay, so you prefer... I loved Ghostbusters 1 and 2. I did. I enjoyed those movies. Great movies. But they were from a certain era. So they're trying to do something new in a new era. They went with a female Ghostbusters cast with a group of comedians that I really like. Now, I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know if, you know, it's great, not. What I saw looks funny. I want to see it still. I really do. It's been a time issue for me more than anything else, more than the stigma even. But what bugged me about the whole thing and what it did detract from my experience right now is the fact that that stigma was out there right from the get-go, and a lot of it was driven by much of what you're saying. It was because of the fact that it's a new Ghostbuster movie that doesn't have the original cast. There's a problem. I'm like, you know, the intense stigma against movies nowadays, taking away from movies that could otherwise have sequels and have, you know, some kind of legs and momentum to them, further character development, further story. This is the fan of serialized stories to me. I want to see more Suicide Squad. I want to see Batman and Superman continue as a franchise. I mean, not that every movie has to be Batman v Superman. I mean, I want to see that franchise gain some legs and go forward because there's storytelling there that I want to see. Clearly, they were setting something up. It was called Dawn of Justice, not the End of Justice. Dawn of Justice implies that they're building something here. They're building an arc, and I want to go on that arc and see where it floats to. The same thing with Wonder Woman. You know, that's her past. I would like to see that movie lead to movies that gradually build towards present day from her. I want to know what happened when she dropped away from man. What was she doing then? You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that have been developed here that have a germination of cool ideas that I would actually love to see fleshed out moving forward. And I'm always afraid with this stigma nonsense that it keeps stories from being developed and going on screen. Did you see Deadpool?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now, this is not detracting anything from Deadpool, because Deadpool was brilliant. I love Deadpool. How can you watch Deadpool and watch Suicide Squad and not get the same feeling?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Do you see where I'm going with that? I mean, you know, and the connection that I'm making there? Because Deadpool, brilliant. Suicide Squad, to me, was also brilliant. I don't get it.
Same thing with, and Guardians of the Galaxy, throwing that as well.
Sure.
I think all three movies had that blend of comedic, blend of action, blend of story, and it's funny because each one had their own, like, Deadpool had way more comedic moments, over the top comedic moments than either Suicide Squad or Guardians did. And Guardians had a really great team building going on. I thought Suicide Squad had a great team building and development. Whereas Deadpool was Deadpool. It was about him. It was about that one focus. And it's it is funny because as much as Deadpool was awesome, I really didn't hear people criticizing criticizing the CGI character. Let's be honest. I think again, it's I don't want to knock the guy. I don't want to knock the movie, but you could very clearly see that was a CGI character. And, and here we had Croc, where, say what you will about whether you liked the makeup or didn't, I like the fact that it was a physical person there. There's a physical presence to him. People criticized Doomsday because it was a purely CGI character, but they didn't have a problem with the Deadpool pure CGI character. I'm like, you know what? You got to pick and choose. Do you want the pure CGI or do you not want the pure CGI? Because we're getting, the DC did a non-CGI character gets criticized. Did the CGI character gets criticized? I'm like, again, they're going after the target. And I'm like, it was one of the things that, there's so many different stuff in, Guardians and Deadpool that you could have criticized if you wanted to. But you know what? It was a good movie. It was a fun movie. Why should I? Same thing with Suicide. There's stuff you could poke fun at if you wanted to, but why? It is a good movie. One of the criticism that angered me when I heard people were talking about with the fact that these criminals were, going along with it. Oh, they should have rebelled against it. Well, the neck bomb kind of really does a really good job with it. And to be honest, that's not an unusual storyline. The Dirty Dozen, long time ago had criminals who the government put on a top secret mission where most of the Dirty Dozen got, killed in the end because of, that's where they were going. They were getting dropped in the middle of Germany. And it's, it's the same type of story, being told. And no one has a problem with that mindset of the Dirty Dozen. Yet when we did it modern day, people were being critical of that. I'm like, but that's the nature of the Suicide Squad. That is who the Suicide Squad is.
You know what it is? Here's what my issue is. You actually touched on it here and really hit it. There's no balance. Like, it's okay to pick out sequences you don't like. I'm not against that. I'm really not. But really, you watched all of, we'll use Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition. No, use the regular. Let's use the theatrical. Let's be fair, because this is a movie review. You watched the theatrical version. You watched the theatrical version of Suicide Squad. Really? There was that much to bash that there was not a balance of some really great things that happened in there? I would like balanced reviews. Go ahead, share the things you don't like, but it's okay to give equal billing to the things that worked. I've seen some great reviews where they didn't like the movie, but in the review it was very fair and pulled out things like, hey, not all is bad. Here's some great sequences. And I'm like, you know what? I agree with that. And I can honestly, in your review, understand why you didn't like the sequences you didn't. Great review. If anything, it made me excited to see the movie again, to see certain things from their perspective. That's a good review. I do think a lot of them nowadays are just so negative that it's like, really? You saw the same movie I did and you don't have that? You don't have any sequences you can pull out and reference that you thought were great? Batman v Superman, one of the things we discussed on our show, which I did see in some reviews after the fact, and greatly agree with them, was the fact that film in many ways was cut up and felt like multiple stories in one. And I get that. We referenced it and chatted about it in that sequence and liked or disliked that presentation to varying degrees. And so I guess I just don't understand why we're not seeing more balanced reviews out there that paint the other side of the story. You can still even keep your score the same while referencing the other piece of it to give accurate journalism. And that's the part I really don't understand, I guess, and I get frustrated with. I just hate seeing things brought down that have a potential for audience, and I do think a lot of these things, by the fact that we've shown interest in them, we can't be alone. There's audiences out there for these things, and they should be allowed to germinate and have their own, enjoyment of it. I don't know. I think it's detracting, to your point, people from sitting down and experiencing for themselves to see if they would like it.
Yeah, it's going back to if you're getting negative out there and you're attacking it before it actually comes out, how can you honestly say you're being a fair assessment of it? And there's so many times where I'm seeing people just cut and paste somebody else's snark. Or they're saying the exact same thing with the exact same phraseology, which I highly doubt. And it's, give me your honest opinion. Tell me why you don't like something. If you're not into the voice that that Margot Robbie used for Harley Quinn, say fine. Hey, I don't like that tone. I don't like how she put the nasally thing in, or how she did that. Or if you didn't like Jared Leto, because there was one of the things I kept hearing people criticism of how he physically sounded as the Joker. And I'm like, what? I thought the Joker voice was great. I thought, again, it had that nice blend of crazy and just evil, as well as maybe there's something, is this an act? When you get that kind of mystery and wonder in it, that for me is the Joker voice. And, again, same thing. Well, there's always criticism of the Batman voice, but it's, there is, like, if you have a problem with it, say what your problem is, but don't, it's like, give me reasoning, give me an understanding. Let's have a conversation, not just make this attack. I think they said this in the episode 1 of Raging Bullets. Snarky to just be snarky. Critical just to be critical. Just that edgy to be edgy. That kind of mindset doesn't work for me. If you're going to be edgy. But don't just be edgy to be, just to make it edgy. Don't be negative just to be negative. If you're negative, tell me why. It takes away from the actual, your commentary if you're just attacking, if you're just being a viper and just going after it. Give me, as you said, give me balance, give me reasoning, give me a conversation. That to me makes for a more thoughtful and more understanding, critique of it, and it's, I don't know, it's something that angers me more and more. I see, with the internet community, and I'm glad our, the people who listen to us aren't that way. I'm glad we got a very, a group who understand, yeah, you can disagree with me, fine, but let's have a conversation on it, not just, this stinks, like, what? Come on, that's nothing. I'm now ignoring you. Tell me, let's go into this. Let's have a conversation. Let's actually lay it out,
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing for it. And I agree with you. I really don't like spending a lot of time on this because I feel like, it becomes a downer. And it's not really how I'm wired. But I do think it was something worth talking about because I do think it's a thing that's out there right now. And I'm reading a lot of articles about it, and they do bum me out when you see this kind of thing. Because I think there's some truth to it. I don't know that it's like this major, oh no, it's a DC movie, let's have conspiracy against it. I do think it's once a stigma's in there and people see that they're getting website hits because of it, their reviews are getting read more because of it, they continue down that path to generate more interest. And it's clearly having an effect. Box office dollars is showing it's having an effect, where things that do gangbusters in the beginning immediately drop off because of this negativity. So that part's really like, woof. You got a lot of power there. How about building something? How many of those reviewers are putting as much passion behind the films that they love? I don't know that I see it. And I'd love to see examples of it, because that part I'd like to see more. It's, do you give the same amount of passion to your reviews for things that you like and really try to promote those movies? I don't see that so often, and that kind of frustrates me, because that's just me enjoying art forms. I'm a big film fan in general, and it's, this isn't a shocking philosophy to anybody listening to the show. It's the same tirades I've gone on for comics. But I just thought it was interesting relating to this piece. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, you know what? Something I just realized as we were talking, because I've got the IMDb up and running, and I'm looking at it. The actor who played Captain Boomerang, Jay Courtney, he was also in the Spartacus TV show that I liked. And as I'm looking, I'm like, wait, which character? I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm seeing images of him from there going, and he looks so differently than what he did. I'm like, oh, wow, because he was a great character in Spartacus. I'm like, oh, man, I wish I just realized that right now. Because he looks so dramatically different in Suicide Squad than he did in that TV show. Again, it's kind of neat. Now again, I want to see it again now just to see, him in the. In the movie, because now I know him from something else.
Jim, our next episode, we're going to do all comic chat. But before we do that, why don't we talk about some listener voicemails?
Cool.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutron!
Hey, how you guys doing? Sean and Jim. Yeah, this is Wasul again. And I would like to comment on Jim's actual logging system for comic books. Actually, it's the way I do mine. I put the books that is no longer active, which I call Council Cavalcade, in one storage area, active books separately, and then various mini-series. But what I would like to talk to you gentlemen about, I have something personal to ask you. You guys actually takes the place of a buddy that I just lost, that I could talk to about a comic book, and you guys take his place. And so for that, I thank you. I also like to ask you some advice on from 2012 to 2015 that was not able to collect books because of financial difficulties. I was always anti-trades. I never wanted a trade or a hardback book. But I started back buying trades from the DC universe since last year, and I got almost probably 75 now, so I've been really stacking them up. And like to think was wanted to know is, do you know any place where you can get discounted trades from, or something to get me caught back up from the last 3 years? Also, this will you'll get a kick out of this, Sean. My first daughter name is Shiera, after Hawk Girl. So yes, that's my daughter's real name. That's no joke. That's her name. It's a middle name. It's not a first name. But her real name is Shiera from the Hawk Girl world of comic books. I love that name. So when I had a daughter, I said, yeah, her name is Shiera. That's what I'm naming her. Gentlemen, I'd like to also comment on the rebirth issue so far. They've got 1,000 right now. I mean, Aquaman, I think, is the top book, but this is reinvigorating. I mean, I'm like Sean. I pretty much never read a bad comic book. The only book I've ever stopped reading in my whole life was Gen 13, and that's because of financial difficulties. I've never quit reading books. That's how I have so many comic books. From 1985 to 2000, I bought every Marvel and DC comic book, active superhero book, miniseries, and action books, and all new universes from that time. So that's how I have that many books. I also like to say that I am at episode 120. Episode. It came off a 28-hour road trip, and I listened to you all for 14 hours coming, 14 hours on the way back. You are the best podcast. You're always my last, what I call the double L. That means the last listen. I listen to everything that I don't like as much as you first, and you always the last listen. So, yes, and I can't wait to get to the last episode, because your episodes are like long movies, which I enjoy. So I appreciate your work, gentlemen. And, hey, DC lives and rocks on, and Rebirth is awesome, and we got our revigoration back, and we finna head to the top. All right. I'll see you gentlemen soon. I hope one day to meet you at a con. Thank you.
I want to meet you at a con too. You're like my kind of crazy.
I know, man.
And I really mean that
We gotta
genuinely
figure this
as a
out.
compliment. I mean, I really, really like this guy. He touched on a couple of things that were real interesting. First of all, I like his cataloging, because I've heard of that cataloging before, and it makes a whole lot of sense. If a series is not continuing, it's closed off, put those away in their own grouping, because the series is no longer in play, and keep the current continuity ones that are still going in their own area. Because I like to, especially when I'm reading a series, sometimes I like to go back and reference things that have happened previously in that particular run or that particular series, and to have that active and going. But it also makes sense, like for a series like Batman, if you have most of Batman, or which obviously he probably does, you would want that to stay in order. So you'd want to keep those continuing, ongoing series in sequential order. So it's interesting how he catalogs, but it makes perfectly logical sense to me. Do you have a special way, Jim? Like, what do you do for your cataloging?
Well, right now my system is very skewed. I gotta get it. I am embarrassed at the level of disorganization I have right now. There are massive piles going on, and I've got to focus on that. But when I first moved into the house, it threw everything off, and I've never really fully recovered from the move to get things back in organization. The ideal situation is, as I said, my one room, I've got my active and open and up and running, and those are actually in piles. I've got 2 long tables, and they're just stacked. I've got the Vertigo over here. I've got the DC Universe. I've got it sectioned off by Bat. I've got the Green Books. I've got, I break it. It's on the tables in sections by broad categories, and those are the active, and it's just a simple pile and stacking. Once a book goes into retirement, then it goes into the file cabinets. And in my computer room, which is also my recording studio, I have a bunch of boxes there, and that's where a lot of the retired are located at. And then underneath the tables, I have room for even more boxes. So I'm planning for the future so I can actually get continue on going where I'm going with this. But it's, again, I've got to change the organization here. I'm not comfortable with how it's actually laid out. I need a couple month period where I can just sit there and empty boxes and put them up and reposition. Figured, okay, this is here, this is here, this is there, etc.
What constitutes a retired book? That sounds ominous.
Well, it's the books that are no longer active, but it's it's a series that's it's not ongoing, so there's not continuing new issues going, and I put that's retired. Secret Six technically hasn't been retired yet because I don't want it to go away. But Secret Six is a definition of what would be a definition of a retired book, because there's no more an active ongoing story. The Nightwing, from the pre-52 is a retired book. And even I actually with Rebirth, I'm kind of changing stuff around. I'm actually there's the current Nightwing story going on, but the previous Nightwing and the previous Grayson series, I'm actually retiring those books, and I'm trying to start fresh from Rebirth and just going with the Rebirth titles and keeping it going that way.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it'd be a new continuity. Well, not a new continuity, but really a new kind of direction and things like that. Yeah, I can see that being a thing. I catalog them in kind of an interesting way now. I used to always do what Russell does, and I actually quite like that method, where you keep kind of the series together in the order, the ongoing and things like that. I didn't do what he does with his Canceled Cavalcade idea. I really quite like that. I think that's a cool idea to do, which sounds like you have elements of that in what you do. What I started doing, though, and this has been about the last 6 years, I found that when I go back into the box, I want to read storylines and arcs. And if there's crossovers, I want to read them together. I always get frustrated when I'm like, okay, now what did this crossover with? And trying to remember what issues from what titles do that. So now when I catalog, I do catalog books by title, but then if there's a crossover storyline, whatever series is the predominant title, the one that kicked off or is the main player in it, is the one where I put the storyline. Any crossover issues, I keep with that title. So that way they're in order according to issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, any crossovers or one-shots that go along with that. Sinestro Corps War would be a great example of that. All of that's together under the Green Lantern title, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I do the same thing with other titles. The Bat Family, when they do that now, I keep those titles together in that arc. Then those books go back to their respective titles, going in order with a gap left off for where the storyline was. So that's kind of how I'm doing it now, and that's really the only reason why I do that is for readability, because I want to go back in and just grab that arc, pull it out, and read and enjoy it. I don't want to have to go hunting through for those issues. So otherwise, I catalog pretty much the way that Russell says, with the exception of the canceled cavalcade thing, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've joked around on the show a couple times, but I'm more and more I'm thinking I may want to try to figure this out. But the Dewey Decimal System, because it's a great way to cross-reference different stuff. Exactly what you're saying. Where if I pull up the Green Lantern books and I see it's part of, you cross-reference it based on story arcs, and you cross-reference it based on the crossovers. So like the Sinestro Corps War story, would be an actual thing where you would have your Green Lantern books, but then you would see the cross references of the different titles, etc.
Yeah, I can see that kind of Dewey Decimal System.
Well, it works. I just got to find a librarian to teach it to me again because I've forgotten it.
That's funny. He was talking. First of all, I love the middle name with being a Hawk Girl reference and all that. I think that's really cool. Just because I am a huge Hawk fan of all the Hawk family. He mentioned where would you get trades? if you're trying to get caught up at a discount. Obviously, our sponsor InStockTrades.com is a great way to do that. They're always doing deals. 40-50% off, that type of thing for specific books. Cons are also a great place to get them. I've done a lot of shopping at cons, including actually with DCV Service and InStockTrades.com. But a lot of places will do special deals at conventions with overstock of books that they've had, where they're brand new books, untouched, that are on special for that. And InStock does that as well. So, obviously I want to shout out our show sponsor because they genuinely do that. But cons are also a great place to do it, and you want to look at those places as well. Because it sounds like he's like me. He wants a new trade, not a used one. But things like half-price books and stuff like that, or if you're looking for used books, comic shops will often run specials on trades and things like that. It's kind of a lot of shopping around and just taking opportunities to find that. I haven't had a lot of luck with bookstores as far as discounts. I've had luck with bookstores as far as I like going there, I like browsing. I pick up things at bookstores, but I haven't seen a lot of discounts. It's pretty much so whatever the cover price is what you're getting it for at bookstores. But that's the nature of bookstores in general. So that's not a knock on them. It's just, I tend to go there and enjoy the browsing experience.
When the free comic book day, every time I go into shops, they always have discounts on stuff during free comic book day. I think that's a great day to shop in the shops, just because, again, not just for the free comic book, but, look and see what kind of deals they're offering, what kind of specials they're offering. But something I've been getting more and more into, which when we first started the show, I never was going to do it, is the internet stuff, the electronic. I've especially some of the really old stuff I've been getting, digitally, and I'm finding a lot of those issues where they're reduced price because they're so old, and $1.99 for an issue, and and stuff like that, and it's if it's. Again, it's, when we first started, I never was an internet reader, but now I'm like, hey, this is actually, I kind of like reading it on my computer. I like, especially because now I got a nice, really big widescreen monitor and it fits in there perfectly. I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat. I like this. So,
yeah, I think here's the great thing about comics now. I really think it's up to us to be ambassadors to just a wide audience. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to collect. Like, you like all singles? Get all singles. If you like singles and trades, get singles and trades. You like all digital? Go all digital. You like a hybrid, digital, singles, trades? Cool, do that. It's one of the nice things now is there's such... it's what the newsstand was back in the old day. There's such a variety of options to get a hold of comics now. The accessibility is easy. It's building a new audience that I think is the hard part right now for comics. and those new people. So I'd like to see more than that. But it's interesting to talk about how we collect now and the accessibility. And honestly, I think the nice part is there's choice for fans. You can keep following however you want to. And to your point, they do run a lot of great digital specials. There's things that I've bought in singles, hardcover or trade, one of the others, and then I've seen those deals on Comixology and jumped at them just because I'm like, oh, that's a great bundle special. To have them instantaneously on my iPad, why wouldn't I do that? There's probably a lot of reasons why I wouldn't do that, but most of them financial, but like when they give a deal, they sucker me in. I'm an easy mark. And I'm genuinely glad with the purchases that I've gotten. I purchased recently, I got the omnibus for the Neil Adams Batman when they redid and recolored them all.
Oh, yeah.
So did you get that one?
Yeah.
Batman Illustrated. Isn't that great? It's a great volume. Yes. And the colors are really pop. I mean, it's very well done. The restoration on those is really neat. But you know what I did? And you're going to love this. Guess where else I have them? I've got them on my iPad. They have them on Comixology. It's like, why? How many ways? So I've got the original 3 hardcovers of that. I bought the omnibus, and I've got them on that. Why? Why do I need that? I don't, but I have it. The omnibus is cool, though. I actually like having all that Neil Adams stuff in the omnibus. I think that's really cool. I'm a big fan of these new omnibuses they're releasing. They did the Batman ones recently, and they're really cool. Like, you know, they're doing the ones. Remember when they did chronological Batman stuff that they released? Well, it looked like that was going to take forever to get like to any substance. Now they're releasing these omnibuses, and they're absolutely awesome of the Golden Age Batman stuff. I'm picking those up and loving every minute of those. I got the Superman one. There's a Supergirl one that was recently released. The Flash one I bought on my iPad because I somehow missed that one. So it's really great that they're releasing these big bundles of issues in these omnibus formats that are great. I'm to the point, though, it's interesting. I've become very much a hybrid reader where I still love singles. I love trades and hardcovers, and I really love digital as well. The one thing that I will never stop collecting, and I never would switch to digital for, would be things like your, what are they called? Absolute editions. Duh. I was drawing a blank on them in a moment. I've got most of, if not all of, the Absolute editions. I love that format.
Yes.
I think there's a quality to the design of the slipcase, the cover, from that ribbon that goes through that you can use as a bookmark, to the page quality, to the size, and the extras. That package is put together so well. You can't translate that over to digital. You just can't. There's something about the quality of that that's great. I see people talk about the singles and the smell. It was Mike Myers, actually, from DC Noise, who I adore. I really just dig that guy. I like his philosophy, his excitement, enthusiasm. It's one of the things I like about him is sometimes I get really enthusiastic about certain books. He's enthusiastic about something else, and I love listening to kind of see where we align and where we don't. And I get jazzed up by just hearing his excitement over stuff. The dude's like a crazy comic fan, and I dig that, as obvious evidence by this. So he was talking the one day, I mean, posting his thread, he was talking about you can have your iPad or something like that. I've got my comic smell. And I made mention of the fact that, well, my iPad gives off comic smell. I got an app for that. But there's a reality to what he's saying. I actually really loved the sentiment of what he's saying. He loves collecting comics. He likes that smell. He likes that experience to it. I feel that way, too. But I also feel that way about Absolute Editions. I think there's something in the presentation and the feeling of substance when you're opening that up and you see the oversized artwork that you can't replicate. And it wouldn't replicate on a big screen. Because you mentioned your screen for your digital, and I actually agree with everything you're saying with that, because I guarantee you our screen size for our computers are pretty similar, and I'm with you. I actually really like that for the zoom in and stuff like that, which is where you're going with that. I echo your sentiment, so this is not in disagreement. But when I read an Absolute, it's a different experience than that, and I love that. And I know you're a fan of the Absolute editions, too, for the same reason.
Oh, big time, big time. And I like it. It's one of the things I like about having the hardcover trades. I always try to get those instead of the trade paperback, just because I like that. It has that novel type of feel to it. It has that literary tone It's got that weight and that girth to it, and it's kind of a neat, just you talk about the paper smell, you talk about the feel as you're flipping the pages, kind of that crinkly sound as you're turning the big thick paper. I'm a big fan of absolutes, and we'll jump on stuff. And there's stories that I have the singles, I've got the hardcover trade, and then an absolute version. Yes, I've got that as well. Oh, and let me get digital as well. So there's a lot of stuff that I have, in multiple formats. But a lot of my rereads will be the absolutes. I'll pull out an absolute and I'll just read it. Like if I feel like reading something, I'll reach to one of my trades. I'll reach to one of the absolutes, and it could be stuff that I've read 100,000 times, and I'll keep reading it just because I do like that experience.
You had me at crinchly sound. Yeah, it's great. Actually, Russell, thank you for calling in. And honestly, I appreciate the kind compliment, actually. Not of us being a replacement for a friend, but being an additional friend to you that you get from that. I actually, and I know you feel the same way, Jim. One of the pure joys of the podcast that when we originally started this, I didn't think would be a thing, but quickly became a thing. It's the friends we've developed through podcasting. Some of them are people that we've met at cons. Some of them are people that we've talked to online. Some of them are friends we've talked to through email, and some of them are just people that just listen that we don't know, but knowing that they obviously are listening because of the numbers that we get. That's sense of community. The Facebook group community, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that quality group of people. That's really been, I think, a surprising part of podcasting has been the friendships that have come to mean a lot to me from just this podcast. I was talking to Daryl Taylor just a little while ago before we started recording, and it was just a couple quick messages back and forth of the Taylor network of podcasts. And he's somebody who, I genuinely consider a friend. I don't get to see him half as much as I would like, but it's nice to know that, through this podcast community, we've just developed a lot of friends and a sense of friendship and camaraderie in this thing that we all know and love. So I appreciate the compliment, Russell, and certainly it's shared. You know what? One of the things I do miss, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Jim. But one of the things I really do miss, and give you a chance to comment on this piece, cons, there was this stretch there where like New York Con was doing tables, the podcast arena and stuff like that, and it was kind of a yearly thing. More than a yearly thing, because we would go to like C2E2 and stuff like that and set up, and that was a lot of fun. There was like this pocket run of that. Not that still doesn't happen at cons. Cons do still do podcasting setups, but not to that level or scale, I don't think. And I miss that interaction from our end. I'm glad that we had those opportunities, and I greatly feel blessed for being a part of those opportunities. I love seeing, even though it's not our podcast, I love seeing podcasts set up at cons, because we do see those setups there now. I love that we still are seeing those happening at cons, because I think it's important for the fans to be able to connect with podcasting through those people. And I applaud podcasters who set up at conventions, because you're getting the word out about podcasts. I was always a believer that when we were at cons, whether people would listen to our show or not, we used to always advertise other podcasts that were there, but also other podcasts that couldn't be there, that said, hey, do you mind shouting us out, the people that we become friends with and things. I really feel just making people aware at this point what podcasts are, because I think that there's a greater understanding of it now, but I still think that it's in its infancy as far as people who could be potentially listeners to our shows, because of the fact that it's not instantly accessible like a radio would be. There's a downloading component, a subscribing component, but I do think we have a much larger audience base to work with now, and an untapped potential for one. So any of you out there that shout out podcasts, whether you're fellow podcasters doing it at cons, you're listeners of podcasts that tell a friend, whatever you're doing to let people know about podcasts, I think it's great. I really appreciate it, because the comic podcasts in general, it's the reason why we're part of networks and things. We can certainly use whatever support we can get, just getting the word out that we exist. It's good stuff.
Yeah, man. I really miss going to cons. Mm-hmm. I miss that. And I miss those, the event that it was, and just the table and hanging out and having people walk up, hey, how you doing? Yeah, and it was just a great moment, and just running into people. And I definitely, your life is crazy, my life is crazy, but we got to make time. And I really want to get back to a couple of these cons, whether I'm just going to them and saying, hey, I will be at the con, let's meet up at the DC booth, or see if we can get a table again. Because I really enjoyed that. That was a fun time of sitting, especially the near the end. Then we really had our groove going, and we were just taking anybody who wanted to talk and just coming at the table and sitting down and getting to meet people that we had never have talked to in the past, that we never would have even had a chance to meet. Just hang out, finding out their book or finding out whatever they're working on, and it's that kind of. That type of community that I miss. We still get to interact with people. We still get to talk to people. But we don't have that face to face, one on one. Look them in the eye and just talk to them that way. It's funny. I laugh with the people at work because I'll talk about friends that I have. I was like, I was talking to this buddy of mine. Like, now, and a couple of the people know, okay, is this an actual friend? Is this somebody you physically met? Or is this somebody that you know on the internet? And they always give me grief on it. And it's a lot of joking around because they kind of understand. But there is a couple of the older people who don't completely understand the nature of being friends with somebody and actually saying, yes, this is my friend, even though I've never physically actually met them, or I've only met them once, but this is still my friend. They understand me. They know me, and I know them. And it's kind of interesting seeing some people who get it, some people who don't. And it's, yeah.
This interests me actually, though, because out of the two of us, I would say I'm quite a bit more of the internet guy as far as being on social networks and stuff like that. So you're saying something that I'm finding interesting that is kind of new to me, because you were referencing like friends that you have that are people that you converse with more on the internet than in person, if at all in person. Do you have a lot of people like that?
No,
Or
you definitely have more than I do. I'm honest with you, because I'm not as outgoing as you are, especially on the internet, because I don't like the internet. I don't like technology. So for me, right. I'm not as outgoing as you, and that's something I always want to be more out there, and I want to be, I want to be more like you, Sean, when I grow up. But seriously, I do want to be a little bit more out there and a little bit more talkative online. But it's, there are people that I still communicate with. There are people that I talk to. There are people from City of Heroes that I'll cool. periodically talk to. And just, hey, how you doing, man? What's this? Hey, have you tried this? Are you playing City the Champions? I'm like, nah. Or they'll throw around and talk about the different type of stuff, and I'll mention comics. I'll mention the comic movies, but you definitely have a lot larger presence out there than I do.
I'm actually. And please know I wasn't saying any of that to knock you in any way, shape, or form. Actually, I genuinely found it interesting because I don't think of you as somebody, because I know you shy away from that. So I think it's actually interesting that you've got these friends that you've developed from things like City of Heroes and things like that you've maintained the friendship. I think it's very cool, actually. I've learned something new where you've kind of broken out, I think, of what would have been your comfort zone, I think, of not doing that. So I think it's kind of cool. It's interesting, just because I think when we started the show, that would not have been a conversation we had.
No. It's with me and just my quirks and personality. It's these are stuff that I've been dealing with for my whole lifetime. It's funny because I'm a bit of a goofy person online. When we do the show, and I do my my whatnot and just who I am, but. There is a lot of times where I'm sitting here as we're talking, and I feel, fear and nervousness, and I'm like, and as I'm going to say something, there's like self-doubt big time.
Really?
Big time. I'm constantly battling that, and it's for me, the fact that I'm not physically staring at somebody actually helps. Because when we first started recording, we were recording in Sean's house, in his room, and it was just me and Sean hanging out. So I could talk it was a comfortable thing, but there was still times when I was having anxiety, as I'm going through, and it was part of the stuff where I'd kind of hang back, I'm like, oh, let Sean talk, and I'll get through my anxiety, and now because I'm in my house and I'm not physically staring at somebody, it does help me out sometimes.
I have questions off of that, actually, because it's interesting, because you and I have known each other for years. So was the anxiety with talking to me because of the nature of it, or was it the anxiety of people listening to it?
People listening to it, personal fears. Me personally, I've never, I've really never felt like I contributed. Especially in those early days. I was always very anti-me. So it was weird because I tried not to give that persona of, that, I'm a nothing. But in my head, I'm thinking, no, you're nothing. You're absolutely doing absolutely nothing to this conversation. Sean is completely carrying you. And especially those early days, I 100% felt you were carrying me the entire time. And nowadays, I feel like we are equal. We're partners, and we're both in on this together. But there are times when that old, me will come back, and that doubt, that self-doubt that I had when we first started the show will come back. And, and then I got to push that aside and muscle through and, and just, continue on.
And I'll tell you something, and this is with 100% honesty and sincerity on this. I have never felt that way about you. And you got to understand, I listen back to every single episode that we do, which I think is a unique thing out of the two of us as well. I'm hypercritical of myself because I have diarrhea of the mouth, and a lot of times I'll be like, oh, okay, Sean, you rambled on and on about that when you should have. But I mean, it's kind of the nature of being conversational when you kind of look at that. But I am. So I get you being critical of yourself. I do the same thing. I really am hypercritical of myself. But I've never felt that way about you. Like, I've genuinely felt like you've always added things to the show. I felt like you add a unique perspective. I actually appreciate the difference you bring to the podcast versus somebody who was a clone of me, if that makes sense. There's times where you will throw in a curveball because you see things, and it's very genuine and smart. You see things different than I do, and it'll be something that I want to debate because I'm passionate about debating it. And that only comes from the fact that I respect your opinions enough that I want to talk about them. Because here's the thing, if I didn't respect your opinion, I wouldn't want to debate it. If I thought there was something worth debating, I would debate it. And I've always debated because I respect what you have to say. I find it interesting. 'Cause if it didn't interest me, I would just move on and just dismiss it. I don't. And I hope I genuinely come across that way. I've never dismissed anything you've said. I've argued things you've said, but that's the part of what we do. The point of throwing things out there, and you throw them out deliberately a lot of times. You know me well enough to know what'll push my buttons, which people don't always realize on the show. You throw things out a lot of times to rile me up. And but that's where your value to the show is through the roof. This wouldn't work without you. So I mean, and that is, I mean that genuinely from episode 1 straight on till now. I think we both hit a stride at a certain point, and I think that comes from knowing how to work with each other in this medium. But I don't think that's indicative of you being a lesser part of the show earlier on. I disagree. I think you were the glue that held it together earlier on because it wouldn't have been as interesting to hear me ramble on.
And to be honest, you never once made me. It wasn't you making me feel like I was. It was me. It's my insecurities, and it's solely on me. And again, it's I could go into a lot of mental stuff with me. So Jim's a little mental, but there are mental issues with me and insecurity and all that. So that's where it was coming from. And it's funny because this show has so helped me get through a lot of that insecurity, and that's actually stuff that has gone through into the real world, into my job, into my life, and just my general perspective on humanity. I still have a negative perspective on society, but that's partially risks of my job. I am a professional skeptic, so I have to be that way. But there is, a side of me that has, this show has really helped me stand up and, be more assertive and be more pronounced as to who I am. And it's, as you know, with work, I do a lot of the it's funny. I'm the technical guy at work, by the way. I'm our technical support. I'm the guy they go to when they have technical questions. So that just shows you how inept they are with the technical side. If I'm their expert, but one of the reasons though, because I attack the technical side and I attack, the testing of it. When we have new operating systems, I'm their go-to guy. When somebody has a problem with their operating system, they're calling me, and I'm the one who's talking them through how to find it and how to fix the problem and stuff like that. And the me of old would never have stood out in front and said, yes, I will be the subject matter expert. Yes, I will do this. If you have a problem, come to me. I will fix it. But again, part of it is this show has really helped boost the confidence. Part of it is just, me in life, just, where I am and who I am. So it's funny how this show, how comic books, how all that has actually really brought out the dun da da in me, as opposed to in the comic book universe.
I can really relate to everything you're saying, though, in a different way. I mean, it shows kind of the unique nature of the two of us. I'm hypercritical of myself when I listen back to the podcast. Not you, though. I actually really enjoy hearing your bits again. When I hear me, I'm very critical of me. You know me well enough to know that, like, my outgoing personality was being silly, especially when we first met. That was kind of my way. But a lot of that was a defense mechanism of my own lack of self-confidence, being shy, things like that. Stuff like this has really helped me even in my career now, because I do speak in front of people a lot now compared to what I would have done. When I taught, I always spoke in front of people, but it was the same class of kids. So I'd be scared for like the first day of school, not scared, but really nervous about it. The first day of school, because it's a new group of kids, how they're going to feel about me, what kind of challenges are going to be there and that type of thing. But as I got to know the kids and all that, I got better at it. I think that's pretty normal for any teacher who's listening to this, be like, oh yeah, first day of school is kind of what the kid's going to be like, what's the group dynamic going to be like, that type of thing. So that I got used to pretty quickly. Parent orientation was the same thing, though. Nervous about that. This podcast, though, especially when speaking in front of new audiences, I still get the nerves and stuff, but I'm a lot more confident. I'm able to riff a lot more. I don't rely on scripting as much. I will prepare, but I don't script myself. And there's a difference between the two. Even the show, you can listen back for anybody who's a long-time listener. This show was very scripted early on. I had full, long scripts. I do the same amount of preparation for episodes now that I did back then, but I don't write myself out a script anymore. And I think the show has become more conversational and honest conversational and prone to breaking off into conversations like this because of the fact that I'm very well prepared for our topic that we're going to talk about, or topics. Also prepared to just kind of relax and let the conversation naturally flow where it does and not feel so beholden to a script. And I think that's important, especially, when we took like Suicide Squad, letting you make a comment and it lead to a sidebar conversation that was far more interesting than maybe what my original intention was about the same topic, if I'm making any sense. So that's the kind of stuff where I think the show has only improved from it, and I think continues to improve. And I think this, podcasting is a great practice for that type of thing. But I am, to this day, I listen back to the podcast, I'm very hypercritical of myself, whereas I'm not with you. It's because I find what you have to say interesting. I genuinely do. And I'm not blowing smoke your way. I think this podcast would not work without you. It never did. Because if you take a look at your role, it shifted throughout the years in the podcast. And I think they were natural shifts, but every one of them was necessary. You started off as the lapsed, never really a DC reader, with the exception of some Superman, but truly a lapsed comic fan. You were not reading at all when we started the podcast. And when you had read previously, it was very targeted and mainly Marvel, with Superman being the DC stuff, with a few minor exceptions. So you really were kind of the newbie to looking at a comic universe. That was your role. But then you grew into this diehard comic fan that just outgrew the role. And your relevance to the podcast, it only increased because of that. But it wasn't because you were a lightweight before. It was more that your new role was better suited to kind of showing your whole personality, which I think is interesting to watch the evolution of that. And I'm sure people listening to this could probably be. I'm easy. It's easier for me to be objective of you and kind of go, "Hey, Jim, this is how you grew," than myself, who I'm still hypercritical of to this day. But somebody listening to the podcast can probably look back and say, "Well, Sean, you used to be like this, and now you're like this." But that's kind of the fun of this, right? I mean, we've been doing this for over a decade now, and it's kind of fun to see that we're in a different place than we were 10 years ago.
Well, we're definitely more, and it's funny because when we first started, people saying, "Yeah, it's kind of like the comic book, discussion." Well, now we really are more conversational.
Sure.
And that's something that it's again, you really drove that. Because even you have led Raging Bullets through this process. We're equal, we're partners in this, and that's awesome. And you've always from day one said, "No, Jim, we're partners on this," and I'm sitting back there agreeing with all the listeners saying, "No, Sean, your show, I'm the co-host." But you always drove it and directed it and guided it to this conversational point where because you mentioned the notes, I showed up with the notes, and you had like triple. You used to have like either 2 or 3 times the number of pages I had, and then as we're slowly going, and it's more of just bullet points, and then just a guide, and it was just going to be a conversation, and that was something that was like, if anything, that's your evolution of who you were on this show, where it's again, it's just a. It was always a comfortable conversation between us, but it's something as time has gone on, it really has, it's evolved from a regurgitation of what the book is to our emotion and our feeling of the book. And it's kind of like that. It's, you listen back to what we, a lot of the stuff we did earlier, you could sit there and you follow our conversation along with the book, which is awesome to do. And we do that every so often. But now it's more of us discussing what happened and how we feel about it and where we think and what, and it's, kind of a shift in what we're talking about. It's not we're talking about the whatnot of the book now, not what happened in the book, but the whatnot.
I think I just stepped in the whatnot. It's funny you mentioned that, though. I think the idea of me being the lead, where it came from, in all honesty, is the fact that I wanted to start the podcast. I, researched the whole thing. I created the website. And this isn't me saying, mine. I don't mean it that way. It became my baby. And it's like when you put together a puzzle, for those of you that that are puzzle fans and kind of understand the analogy there. When you start putting together a puzzle, you only want so much help if anybody's jumping in, because you've started that project and you want to finish it and feel like you put it together. This is my puzzle. You've offered very kindly many times to, like, hey, show me and I'll do the editing. I never wanted you to do it. And let me explain, and I think you know why.
I know why.
It's not because of a lack of trust. It's exactly the opposite. It's more of I've put all the rest of them together. They're mine. And I mean, it's that kind of thing with it. One of the things that I've known, and it's where my respect for you has only increased, in putting that together, I listen back to you more than... I listen to you so much when you and I are recording together, but I'm also, when I'm recording, I'm thinking of my thoughts and what I'm going to say. When I'm editing it, I'm not. I'm completely engaged in what's being said. So I get to hear a lot of what you're saying back. It makes me further realize even more how essential you are to the show when I hear it back in isolation without having to be like, and I want to say this, and I can't forget to say that, and he said this, and I've got to say this about it. It's a very different kind of bobbing and weaving that goes on in those moments and it's fun. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see where the show has gone and where it's been, but it wouldn't work without you by any stretch. It just wouldn't.
And it's funny because every so often I think about doing, like, maybe it'd be kind of neat to do another show or do a different show. But to be honest, I don't want to record without you there, because I like having conversations with you. Because every so often I think it'd be neat to do a wrestling podcast. And talk, because and it's funny because I'm like, I love talking about wrestling, and every time I listen to the wrestling podcasts that I've listened to, I'm like, I want to, call into the show and I want to talk to them, like, no, but you're missing this. What about this and that? And then I'm like, then every time I start thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, me and Sean would do a great wrestling podcast, but I don't want to, I know how busy and crazy your life is. I don't want to throw another one on you. I don't want to do that to you. And then I'm like, but I don't want to do the show without you. And it's a weird thing.
But that's the pop culture and whatnot thing, right?
Right.
I mean, and we really should, like, when you have ideas like that of things you want to do, that's why we started doing some of those episodes every so often, was to sneak in things that fall outside of DC, but to make sure that they're branded so people who listen to the show know, hey, this is outside of what we normally do. So we really should do something like that, because I wouldn't mind. Believe me, there's no topic that I wouldn't talk about on this podcast, and I think that's a way to do it. To your point, I've toyed around. We've talked many times about like what we would do after this one, and after this one turned into 10 years later, we're still doing this one. So I mean, it's interesting how we have ideas of podcasts we would do outside of Raging Bullets, but this always is the priority. And I think there's a certain continuity of this that we both enjoy. It's like, seeing the universe expand. I think you'll know when we lose interest in DC because we won't be doing this show.
Right.
And I mean, that would be the only indicator that, like, oh, wow, those guys really have just not, the DC fans anymore. Because I would not do this show just to do it. I would do it because I want to talk about this. Because to your point, there's so many other topics that you and I could be doing a podcast on that, quite frankly, if I wasn't interested in talking about DC Comics, I would go talk about something else.
Yeah.
I just enjoy doing a podcast about that. I never want to get snarky and bitter about the topics I'm talking about because I no longer want to discuss them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
That would be
and it's funny because that's something that we both are 100% in agreement on. And it's you and I have had, we each in our own respective jobs have just had a horrible week when we were just getting pummeled and we kept wanting to record and because of things. But, we've been now recording for almost, over 3 hours and we're still laughing and joking. This has just revitalized and revigorated, and I can hear it in your voice as well.
Oh, yeah.
So we're both and it's just talking comics, talking about that, talking about this, and just, hanging and laughing. And that is for me what this show is about. That is for me what this show is. As long as we keep having this level of fun, we're going to be doing this. If someday later on we change it from DC to yada yada, we're still going to have that other show going on.
I agree. Time would have to allow that, though.
Yeah.
And that really would be the case. So that's interesting. It's always interesting to talk about those things. I think we both have a lot of ideas on what that would look like. I think if we did a secondary show to this ever, time-wise, if it allows it, and there will be a time where we'll be able to get this back on. See, part of the problem right now is this is on a very erratic schedule where we're trying to get in 3 a month every month, but it's what that release looks like is erratic because of our current job schedules at the moment. But that will stabilize, and we will get this back on track with a consistent release schedule and be able to look at something like doing an additional podcast. That one I would like to be more freeform, though. Not as a knock to this one. I adore this one because it's not. I actually like that this is very focused on one company and, very niche. The other one I would like to be more freeform because then we can just get in whatever topics we want, and it would be a nice complement to this to have something that's open air and keeping this one contained. I think that would be kind of fun for the duality to do those two different kinds of things. This show
would be a ball.
Yeah, this show, I think, just because of historically being able to look back and see the stuff that we talked about so early on and where we're at today with it, it's fun that we've been through a lot with DC in the years that we've done it. And I've actually enjoyed every bit of the reading that's gone along with the conversation that we've had. So I hope, honestly, my hope is that reading remains as motivational as it is for this, because that's part of what doing this is all about. It's the reading and the watching and the whatnot of doing this podcast.
If you weren't going to say it, I was going to.
There's actually something, and one of our fellow podcasters, it might have been DC Noise, or it was Jeremy Eloy, and I don't have it in front of me at the moment. I'm going to poorly reference this. We'll have to talk more about this. They started a DC podcast, and if you go to the Facebook fan group, they're advertising it there, and please check it out because they're great people. And the name's escaping me. I think it's DC Unleashed. And if I'm wrong on the name, I apologize, but it's on the Facebook fan group. You'll see it there, and they started one. They may have been the ones that were talking about it. Telltale. Are you familiar with Telltale's games? They do the Walking Dead games and stuff like that. Are you familiar at least with the concept of what they are?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, they're the point-and-click adventure games. Remember those where
Okay.
Well, they're modern-day point-and-click adventure games. They're available on the consoles. They're available on computers. Usually every platform they do something on. The phones, tablets, wherever you can usually get them. And it's the classic point-and-click adventure game with the modern technology, being able to drive them. They're episodic, usually. There's usually 5 episodes in them, roughly. And the story's ongoing. They're released about every month when they come out. So it's about a 5-month cycle. And I say about because usually 1 or 2 of the episodes winds up excessively delayed, and that 5 months turns into 7. But I'm a fan of those things being delayed, turned out well, and enjoy the process. The cool thing about those games are the choices that you make in the game affect the story and have a huge impact on where the second episode, the third episode, the fourth episode, and such will go. Also, if the game has a sequel, if you have it installed in the same system, it will pull your choices from the original game in most cases, and they will impact the second game in the series. So you're crafting your own path through the story. If you go and play it again to make different choices, you will actually get a different story path. Which
That's cool.
Yeah, it's just very neat. The reason why I'm referencing this now is there's a Batman Telltale game that's out. The first episode came out, and I got to play it. And it's really cool. I quite enjoy it. The cool part about this is there's a heavy focus on being Bruce Wayne and what it's like to be Bruce Wayne and dealing with situations that happen in Gotham as Bruce Wayne. Harvey Dent's running for district attorney. You have the crime families that are in there. You have Catwoman in there when he's Batman, and dealing with the fact that things that happen when he's with Catwoman will affect who knows that he's Batman, stuff like that. It's cool stuff that happens in it. The relationship with Alfred is everything that you want it to be. It's like Elseworldy continuity, if that makes sense, in the sense that it feels like it's very current contemporary comics in its presentation. But there's enough of it that's Elseworldy where you feel like it's in its own universe, but yet it's more closely linked to current continuity comics than it would be to like Batman and the Knights of the Round Table or something like that, if you follow me on that end. It's a great game. I really enjoy it. You have the option to buy like the first episode or just to buy the season pass and get the whole shebang when it comes out. But I like it. It's a point and click piece. You have choices at times to handle things as Batman or Bruce Wayne, because sometimes the situation causes you to make decisions. A lot of times you'll make the decision on who you interrogate and how you interrogate them. Your public responses to people, like when you're communicating, will have an impact on perception of you and who will help you later and how they view you. That includes your closest confidant, such as Jim Gordon. I liked it so far as a first episode outing. The initial part of the story, like it feels like it's a prologue, like ramping up to where the story's going to go. But they go into like some deep Batman history and start to pose some of the questions about the history of the Wayne family and stuff like that. They're really playing around with embracing the fact that they've got their own universe to play around with. So if you have a computer, a smartphone, or a tablet, or a kind of game console, I'm playing mine on the PS4. The Batman Telltale game's interesting. I really quite like it. I've enjoyed the Rocksteady Batman games quite a bit that were released recently. This is a nice change. It's nice to play a Batman game that is story-driven and point-and-click. It's nice to play a DC game that's in a different venue and a different theme. So I don't know. This one really struck me. I'd be interested if anybody has thoughts out there you want to call in and talk about if you're playing it. You digging it? Obviously, it's only one episode in so far, but what did you think of the first one? I thought it was a great intro to it. It's clear that there's chapters that are going to be coming that are going to be more of the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. But getting me used to the mechanics and the game and the premises behind it, I thought were cool. You could even, at the start of the game, you can customize the colors of the Bat Gadgets, meaning they have a heads-up display, and you can have them either closer linked to Batman's gauntlets in color, or you can like pick purple or red or different things like that. And it's kind of cool to have the computer display pop up and go and know that you customized it, if that makes any sense. The Batcave tech is affected by your choices, which is kind of interesting. So they do some interesting things to play around with it that you customize your world, and it's a lot of fun. So it's good stuff. So I wanted to shout it out just because I greatly enjoyed it, and we haven't really talked about it in the podcast. So I tried to be spoiler free on that one while giving you enough meat and potatoes to say maybe you should try it out and see if it's a thing for you.
I want to try that out now.
It's fun. It's really fun. And it's if you liked classic point and click games, it's a lot like that. But it's a lot more like a modern version of it where the choices you make are more logical than... I loved classic point and click games. This is not a knock to it, but sometimes they had you doing ridiculous things. Like if you put the rose in this box and then drop it on somebody's head, you get to move forward. And it didn't make any logical sense. You just had to do these things. And like for some reason, they thought that was a great puzzle. This doesn't have anything like that, at least so far. The puzzles all seem logical. And seem which also immerses you more into the game because you feel like you're playing as Batman, which is kind of cool. You have to scan a crime scene and actually reconstruct
Look for clues, etc.
And reconstruct the crime.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool stuff. So I don't know, I found it I'm a Bat junkie, so it doesn't take much for me, but I found the game to be a lot of fun. If I had to give it a letter grade right now for the initial first episode, I would say it's about a B. I wouldn't give it an A yet because I see the potential of it, and I thought for an introduction into Batman, it's their newer engine, and it feels like they're still working out some of the kinks in that engine. The graphics are great, though. I really like the voice acting and storyline. The storyline's engaging. I'm really enjoying the storyline. There's some interesting mechanics on how to use Batman's tools and stealth and things like that to make it happen. Interesting mechanics with Bruce Wayne as well. There's some things that feel kind of like they're still testing the waters, if I'm making any sense, which is why I can't quite give it an A. But I'm hoping later chapters, like as the story ramps up, I start going, man, episode 1 really paid off a lot here. So it's a tentative B. The B that's there now, depending on where the story goes, I could look back and say, you know what, episode 1 was an A because of what it led to. It's too early to tell. So I'm kind of in that place of it. It's like the start of a TV series, where you're kind of like, man, I enjoyed that. If they pay a lot of this off, this could be a great series. It's in that place. So neat stuff. I want to shout it out.
Now I can get out of here.
Jim, I want to shout out our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you a part of the show. We are available at ragingbullets.com. That's where you can find out news about what's coming up with the podcast. We have a Twitter that links right out of that page. So if you prefer to find out your news via Twitter, we're there. We have a Facebook group, but also we have a Facebook fan page. And let me talk about the fan page first. The fan page is where you'll find out the same information you'll find on the website, just news about the updates, episode releases. And then our Facebook group community. We share this with Infinite Comics, and it's just Jeremy, the whole crew that's over there, just do such a great job of just keeping it lively and active. It's a fun community of fellow podcasters, of fellow comic fans, bloggers. People post there all the time of cool things that they're doing. It's really an open community. If you are not part of a Facebook group, I highly encourage you to join and hang out with this crew because it's just such a wonderful group of people. So I just want to shout them out and thank everyone who participates there. We are available on Google+. I'm on the PlayStation Network. There's all kinds of places to find us, and we love interacting and connecting with you. Jim, we are sponsored this episode by DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. DCBService.com, what's going on with them?
Come on, bundles. And, of course, all these bundles, 50% off. They're breaking down the DC Rebirth titles within 4 different groups and including a new miniseries bundle that have the 4 new DC miniseries coming out. Love the fact that these are all 50% off. Check out, see which bundle, or get them all and really save some money.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they have the Injustice Year 4 hardcover. This just came out. It's 45% off, only $12.64. I'm a big fan of this. It's a digital series. I don't know if you've been collecting this at all, Jim. It's based on the game. And this is Year 4 of the tie-in to the game. So the story's been continuing on that. And I'm really loving it. It's actually, the iOS game keeps getting updated. On that game, now they have Suicide Squad content from the film on it as well. So they keep adding things into this game. And The premise of the comic book is it sets up why DC heroes would be fighting each other and embraces the multiverse concept. Very cool story, very well written. You don't need to be playing the game to enjoy this book. Highly recommend checking it out. They also have over there, when we're looking at it, some books that I really loved. I was a big fan of the classic Star brand from Marvel's New Universe. Volume 2 is available of that, 45% off, only $19.24. They have the Star Wars trade paperback, Volume 3, Rebel Jail, 45% off, only $10.99. This is the events that take place after the first New Hope movie, so it's just really good stuff. Hellblazer trade paperback, volume 14, Good Intentions. That's 45% off, only $13.74. So no matter what your comic interests are, InStockTrades.com is your source to get your collected editions. Also, I want to shout out for DCBService.com, and I did not mention this. They are a digital partner. Whether you shop Comixology or My Digital Comics, make sure to link those accounts to your DCB Service account. You earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB Service order. You don't have to pay anything else for that. The only catch is you want to do your shopping through DCB Services portal. If you go to DCBService.com, you'll see the digital comics up at the top. You can go to Comixology right from there. You get credit then towards your DCB Service account, which means you are now earning money for things you're already buying anyway. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Jim, our next episode, we're going to talk comics. Not just comics, but comics. Kind of like you talk about bundles. There's so much Rebirth stuff going on that you and I really need to check in with Rebirth and some of the things that are going on. There's a ton of books I want to discuss right now. So we will be talking Rebirth again and jumping back into our massive look at Rebirth starting next week. We'll see you then.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.